Okay, the meeting has started. I would first like to begin by welcoming members of the public and the press who will be watching the live stream of this meeting via the Council's website. Members, as I'm sure you're all now aware, please keep your video cameras switched on for the duration of the meeting and keep your microphone muted except when I invite you to speak. Please click the raised hand function if you wish to ask a question, and just a reminder, when you have asked your question, can you please lower your hand? There is always a risk that there will be technical problems, and I would ask all for your patience as we go forward. Should this occur, I will declare an adjournment while the fault is addressed. The public broadcast will be paused at that point, and it will be not possible to address the fault. If they not address the fault, the meeting may have to be abandoned until such times as we can reconvene. Can I remind members and officers and public speakers that the virtual meeting is taking place? So what I would like to now to do is ask individual members to see if they are present at this meeting. I'll do them alphabetically. Councillor Connor.
Present.
Councillor Dupre, who I understand is substituting for Councillor Batchelor.
Present.
Councillor Fuller.
Present.
Councillor Hartford.
Present.
Councillor Howell.
Present.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Present.
Councillor King.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Present.
Okay. Councillor Manning.
Present.
Councillor Taylor.
Present.
And myself, Councillor Bates. Can then I move really to item 1 on the agenda, which is apologies for absence and declarations of interest. Can I ask Democratic Services to say those, please, now?
Yes, as already indicated, Councillor Batchelor has given his apologies and Councillor Dupre is the substitute for this meeting.
Okay. Has any other member got a declaration of interest? I therefore wish to say that I wish
Chairman, Councillor Hartford wishes to speak.
Oh, okay. Councillor Hartford?
I think perhaps I should declare an interest as being a very new member of CamCycle.
Noted. Thank you. Now this is Councillor Bates speaking now. I wish to declare a...
I'm so sorry, Chairman. Councillor Taylor wishes to speak, I believe.
Oh, okay. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. If we're declaring CamCycle, I suppose I ought to declare an interest as I won't say a very old member of CamCycle, but as a very long-standing member of it.
And I believe Councillor Manning also wishes to speak, Chairman.
Thank you.
Yeah, apologies, Chair. It is in the register, but as everyone else is mentioning it, I'll mention that I'm a member of CamCycle.
Okay. Anybody else? No?
I'm not sure, but I think Mr.
Yeah, I think sorry. I can't find that hand. Oh yeah. Where is it? Yeah, sorry, I've been a member for years. I thought by stating it at the start of the full council at the start of the year that was enough.
Yeah, okay. I think you're right, Noel, but people have declared their interest. It's a public on video, so we'll take that as you're all members of the cycling campaign group. I would wish also to declare a declaration of interest, a prejudicial interest in respect of the item at the end of the report, which is item 9, which relates to Hilton. So I declare that interest at this particular point in time. So if there is anything, for instance, that as we go through the agenda, members, that you think you need to declare an interest, please indicate that you wish to do just that. Move on, please, to item 2, which is the minutes of the Highways Committee meeting on. So can we please have any amendments, suggestions or alterations that members wish to bring to our attention regarding the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, there's a very small thing on page 4 and 5, item number 15, the third bullet point. It currently reads 3 local members. It should read 2 local members.
Thank you, Councillor King. Those are duly noted and I'm sure they can be changed. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to raise something pertaining to the minutes and the action log. Would you like me to mention that now, or would you like me to wait till we get to the action log?
Let's wait till you get to the action log, because that's the next item at item 3. So if there are no changes to
Sorry, I don't mean that actually. I mean the agenda plan.
Oh, okay. Look, can we all approve the minutes of the meeting, which have been published on the minutes of the meeting which held on the 7th of July? All in favour of those? I'm not seeing any hands raised apart from Councillor Taylor, which has now kindly taken hers down.
Agreed, Mr. Chairman.
I take that as nobody's indicating wishing to object to that. Those minutes are duly passed. Can we then move on to the action log, which you have before you, and it's really Councillor Dupre.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to refer to minute number 15 in the action log, Wisbech Access Strategy Phase 1 delivery. And I was very pleased to see that Councillor King has been added to the steering group due to the amount of housing growth in his electoral division. It's always very good to see members with strong local interests and reasons to be on a steering group to be so represented. And I note that the constitution has been changed to allow Councillor King to be added. I would suggest, therefore, that this is a precedent to include an additional space for me as representative of Sutton on the HCV Diamond Working Group, where I have a similar strong interest, as do all of my constituents in HCVs going through villages in that diamond area. And I would like to ask that the precedent, thus having been set by Councillor King's inclusion in that steering group, that a similar arrangement be put in place for the HCV Diamond Working Group.
Councillor Dupre, can you please point me as to where that appears on the action log?
It's, as I said, minute 15. It's the bottom of, it's page 27 of the agenda bundle. It's minute number 15, report title, Wisbech Access Strategy Phase 1 delivery. It's the minutes of the meeting of the 7th of July 2020.
The minutes have been just approved. I'm on the action log.
And I'm on the action log also, Chairman. Page 27 of the agenda bundle. It's the
Page 27 of the...
Yeah, page 27 of the agenda bundle.
Yeah, regretfully, the screen I'm looking at doesn't have page numbers, which is not helpful, is it?
Right, I'll see if I can expand my screen and count the number of pages down the action log.
Yes, do apologise.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th of page of the action log. 3 up from the end.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
It's the minutes of the Transport Committee of 7th of July, and it's minute number 15, Wisbech Access Strategy.
Yes, I do see the Wisbech Access Strategy.
Yeah.
Which is minute 15, and this is on the action log, and that is requesting that other local members, Councillor King is mentioned there, added to the steering group. That's what I'm reading.
That's correct.
Yes.
And my request, therefore, is that as an exception has been made to add Councillor King to a strategy group because of the strong local interest of his constituents, that a similar addition be made of my name to the HCV Diamond Working Group on the basis of this precedent and because of the intense interest of my residents in that issue.
I take the point, but it is not on the action list. I'm happy to take that away and discuss it with officers and the chairman of that group, but it is not on the action list as it's currently stand and I'm currently looking at. So I'm sorry. I'm happy to take that away and talk to officers on that particular point.
Thank you. I'll await an update on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Officers, are there any amendments that you wish to bring to our attention in respect of the action log? Okay. Mr. Hughes, anything to add?
Nothing to add, Chairman.
Okay.
I've
Mr.
got
Chairman.
Councillor
I've got
Howe.
something to add. Oh, sorry.
Councillor Howe has his hand up.
Okay.
Apologies, Chairman. I was going to speak with regards to Councillor Dupre, but I've left the hand up. I'll now lower it.
Okay. So Councillor King, you have a hand up. You wish
I
to
do,
speak.
Mr. Chairman, and my apologies. I forgot to put my hand up, but I just have a question about the action log as well. It relates to the LHI work, and there's an A and a B. I'm particularly interested in the B because there was supposed to be a meeting early in September with you and the vice chairman, and I just wondered where we were going with the scoring criteria.
Okay. Mr. Hughes, can you perhaps add something to that, please?
Thank you, Chairman. If you don't mind, I was going to ask Richard Lumley, who's also on the call, just to clarify, I think has been leading on the work in relation to LHI, Chairman.
Thank you. Richard, can you please address the question for Simon King about the local highways initiatives?
Thank you, Chairman. So this, at the moment, there hasn't been a further meeting on the LHIs. It is something that needs to be picked up. It was put on hold following the COVID pandemic. There was a meeting early on in lockdown, and it needs to be re-looked at the moment. So at the moment, nothing is in the diary for that.
So, sounds to me like that needs to be added to the action list, Simon. Okay.
It is already there, Mr. Chairman, and
Yeah.
I think it's the fact that in the final column it says action ongoing, not action on hold. And I had rather hoped that we would have the new scoring criteria in place before the panels met early in the new year, but that doesn't sound as though it's going to happen.
Okay. Rob Sanderson, you have a hand raised.
Yes, just to say, note on 5, the A10, A142 roundabout improvements, a letter was sent to the Combined Authority on the 14th of September. So that is now a completed action. And in fact, I've seen in the emails this morning that they have acknowledged and will take account of what was, what the committee asked to be requested.
Okay, thank you for that. I have no other hands wishing to speak. So can we move on from the action log? Those are duly noted, and move on, please, to the next item, which is item 4 on the agenda, petitions and public questions. We have quite a few petitions and quite a few public questions, which are all related to the item 9, and I'm proposing that we take those at item 9. Okay, so so with that, can we move on, please, to item 5, which is winter service plan. That's going to be introduced by Jonathan Clark. So Jonathan, could you please introduce item 5 on the agenda, please? Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. The item is to approve the winter service plan for the 2020-2021 winter gritting season. The background is Cambridgeshire County Council, in its role as Highway Authority, has a statutory duty under the Highways Act to ensure, so as far as reasonably practicable, that the passage along the highway is not endangered by snow or ice. Winter service operations in Cambridgeshire are jointly provided by Skanska and Cambridgeshire County Council under the Cambridgeshire Highways umbrella. The operation deals with regular and frequent and reasonably predictable occurrences like low temperature, ice and snow, as well as exceptional weather events. And although a specialised area, the winter service is a significant aspect of network management, both financially and in terms of its importance to road users. It can also have significant environmental effects. The production and adoption of this winter maintenance policy and operation plan establishes how the County Council is able to demonstrate that the current legal obligations are being met by the authority and being done in such a way that ensures the resources are deployed in the most economic, efficient, effective and environmentally friendly manner. The winter plan is reviewed on an annual basis to ensure that any of the changes in the network length, such as all the work associated with the A14, new developments, budgetary changes and resource pressures and revised legislation are taken into account. The plan also provides the County Council's defence in any subsequent insurance claims. The budget for the coming season's winter service is £2.6 million. The main issues are as follows. Cambridgeshire Highways currently grit approximately 44% of the highway network. This comprises of both primary and secondary routes and the guided busway, also cycleways and a number of footbridges. An interactive map is available on the County Council's website, and maps are included with the plan, the source document at the end of this report. Work this year has really been focused looking at how we treat the network, as I've already mentioned, due to the A14 works. And just to let you know, 9 routes have been altered so that we can accommodate that. Primary routes are sections of the network which serve as major connecting routes for the communities and allow the majority of users to commute and access essential services across the county. Secondary routes are those that are gritted in addition to primary routes when there's a forecast of a prolonged cold spell, when road surface temperatures fall below 0 and snowfall is forecast. County is split into 3 weather domains for forecasting purposes. Forecasts are received for each domain, and that means rather than sending the gritters out across the whole county, we can break it into the 3 domains and decide which areas we're going to send gritting, which is more cost effective and environmentally friendly. The domains are north and east, south and west, and finally city. And the decisions made to whether we go gritting or not is carried out by a team of both Cambridgeshire County Council staff and some Skanska staff, and they've all been fully trained through the Institute of Highway Engineers winter service decision making course. The council has a fleet of 37 gritters which are leased from a company called Econ as part of a 7-year agreement. The agreement with Econ is currently in its 6th year. Skanska are responsible for providing the drivers, and generally there are 2 drivers per gritter. Each gritter is assigned a dedicated route and it's required to be completed within 2.5 hours. Cycleways remote from the carriageway are treated with a number of quad bikes, but also the gritters can treat cycleways that run alongside the roads. And as new cycleways are built, we'll assess those to see whether they can be added to the routes we currently treat. As important as Skanska and Cambridgeshire County Council are to the winter service, we've also got a huge team of volunteers. And each year we write to the volunteers in September, and that's at the parish, town and city councils, and promote the winter volunteering scheme. Those that sign up to the programme will identify footpaths and dedicated cycleways that they would like to be gritted in the freezing weather. For example, outside schools or shops. And we support them in this through supplying equipment and training. Once the risk assessment form is completed, the volunteers are covered by our insurance for working on the highway. Currently, there are approximately 52 winter volunteers from 22 parishes across the county. Salt is typically supplied to them, the volunteers in strategically placed grit bins, and there are approximately 850 grit bins across Cambridgeshire, which we also replenish every year. And we will continue to promote the winter volunteering scheme. Future challenges include the ability to accommodate the increasing length of highway network arising from new infrastructure and developments. Discussions are currently underway with Highways England to understand when new roads will be handed over to the County Council as part of the A14 project, and therefore which these points will need to be included in our winter plan. Other challenges that we face, and these are national challenges, not just typical to Cambridgeshire, are the recruitment and training and retention of drivers, as well as our decision makers. Work to procure the new gritting fleet has commenced to ensure continuity of resource, and the current contract ends on the 1st of May 2022, and the report will come to this committee to seek approval to award the replacement contract in due course. So I'm asking the committee to approve the winter service plan for the 2020-2021 winter gritting season. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take those.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. I've got some raised hands already, so I think we'll go straight into the debate, and I will do them in order that I have come in. And the first is Councillor Hartford. So over to you, Councillor Hartford, to ask your question. I think it would be useful if I pick up one or two other questions before coming back to you, Mr. Clark, okay?
Thank
Linda.
you very much, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Clark, for an excellent report. I have to say that every time I read this policy, I am amazed at the intricate detail and the scientific basis upon which we actually carry out our responsibilities for winter maintenance. So I just want to say that, again, reading it from start to finish, I'm absolutely amazed at the effort that goes into doing this well. I have got one or two things that I'd like to raise, and I apologise, I've got a feeling I've asked this before, but when you look at the budget for the salt on page 28, it says for South Cambs purchased from Highways England, but it doesn't say what the budget for that is, and I'm assuming there must be a set budget for that. So I would like to be reassured as to what that is, and that it is commensurate with the responsibilities that we have there. I'm also, you've referred once or twice to the matter of the infrastructure that's going to be handed over from Highways England. My sense is that that handover may not be completed before we have need to do some of this work. And I would really like to understand how we're going to cover that. I'm just a bit concerned that we've shown how diligent we are in doing this work. I want to make sure that if some of it is still going to rest with Highways England, that they show the same degree of diligence. And I wasn't clear in that respect where the detail of some of the cycle path bridges was covered. Appendix K refers to some bridges that I think are also used by cyclists, but it was entitled footpaths. So if you could just clarify where we see the detail of the cycle paths, particularly the bridges. I'm thinking particularly of the one at Bar Hill, because we have quite a steep gradient as it comes down towards Bar Hill, and we've already had some safety issues there, which I'm taking up with Highways England. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll move on, I think, to the next is Noel Kavanagh. Noel, if you'd like to ask your question or observations, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, John, for a very good comprehensive report. My question relates to the gritting of the cycleways, and I noticed on 2.6 there's reference made to that, which is straight after the information about the 37 gritters being available in the fleet. I was just interested to know how many quad bikes the county has available for gritting the cycleways, and in the light of the fact that the mileage of the cycleways is increasing all the time, are there plans to put aside budget for more quad bikes? Because I imagine there must be a great deal of pressure on the existing bikes. So one is, how many quad bikes are there? And in the light of the increase in the mileage of the cycleways, are there plans to increase the number of quad bikes if necessary? Thanks.
Thank you, Noel. I'll move on now to Councillor Lorna Dupre. Lorna, if you'd like to ask your questions or your observations, please.
Thank you very much. I've got a number of questions and I'll be as succinct as I can about this. Councillor Ian Manning and I have spent more time than we ever expected to spend in the last year learning about the intricacies of the winter maintenance budget, and I'd like to thank officers for their time in assisting with that. But it does mean that we read this report with considerable interest. There's much in the report that we can support, not least the decision of the council to continue to grit the routes it tried to drop in 2016. However, there are a number of aspects where we feel the report does fall short and we can't give it our unqualified endorsement. My first question is about the budget. Last year, this committee was told that there would be an overspend of £463,000 on the winter maintenance budget due to the way in which the new highway service contract was framed a few years ago. We were given a variety of conflicting explanations for this. In the second half of the last municipal year, Councillor Manning and I did a lot of work with officers to examine the various elements of the winter maintenance budget, and in particular those budget lines which were most responsible for driving the considerable increase in costs to this authority. It's disappointing that none of that work appears to have been referenced here, nor any attempt made to use that information to contain spending where possible. The entire overspend announced last year now appears to be baked into the budget for this and presumably future years. So my first question is, what have officers learned from that work done last year on the details of the winter maintenance budget, and how is that learning reflected in today's report? My second question is about decision making. Part of containing the winter maintenance budget is to make the right call on whether to grit or not on any particular date, and we appreciate the intense work that goes into that. The report doesn't really cover the extent to which the service is refining its decision making, or whether there are opportunities to do so in future. It does, however, note that recruiting decision makers is challenging. So my second question is, to what extent has decision making improved over time? How is it planned to improve decision making further in the future? And how is the council addressing the identified challenge of recruitment of decision makers? The third question is about the winter volunteer scheme, which has already been mentioned by Mr. Clark. There are 263 civil parishes in Cambridgeshire. The 22 parishes participating in the winter gritting programme therefore represent some 8% of parishes in the county. What is it that makes the winter gritting volunteer programme so unattractive to the majority of parishes, and what is the council doing to try to improve the offer and try to make it more appealing, is my third question. My fourth question is the involvement of district councils. The report says that district councils continued to treat areas using equipment and salt provided by the county council during severe weather in the winter period. However, according to my own district council, who I've asked about this arrangement goes back many years. No formal agreement can be located, and the last time it was called upon was quite a few years ago. So my fourth question is, what is the status of this arrangement, and how often does this council believe it's used? And my fifth point is just a point to say that the list of footway bridges for gritting includes the Jane Costain Bridge at Milton. I can understand why highways officers would have had the name of a prominent infrastructure contractor on their mind, but for future reference, this is of course the Jane Costain Bridge.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dupre. At the moment, there are 9 questions. I'm proposing actually not to bring the other 3 members in at this particular point, but hand over, I think, back to John Clark to try to address some of those questions which have been raised by members to date. So before we move on to the next 3 speakers, John, if I can invite you to come back and address some of those questions, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So Councillor Hartford first. So the cost of salt at South. So we use Highways England's salt storage depot at the Whittlesford facility. So we have an arranged reciprocal agreement with them So the salt that we purchase from them is at the same price as salt we purchase through our ESPO contract for our other depots. And Highways England, they sometimes use our Huntingdon facilities to run some of their gritters out of. So the salt, there's no increase or decrease in the salt price. It's the same as what we would purchase it through other contracts. And we also, we're able to manage our salt stock levels as well through those arrangements. So hopefully that's answered that one for you. A14, you spoke about, there's numerous ongoing conversations and working groups, not only about winter maintenance, but the ongoing maintenance of and maintenance of the asset we're going to be receiving. We're having numerous conversations because it's key that we understand the exact point where our responsibility ends and the exact point, you know, that we're talking about to the width of my hand, where we stop and where they start. And there'll be a number of meetings where we'll actually go out on site. We'll probably put some nodes down on that road, so we're quite clear. So not only do we need to know where, we also need to know when. So we're asking questions now. Hopefully you understood that we've been looking at, if I say Bar Hill, for example, we've changed our gritting route to deal with all of that, those changes there. But when the A14 is detrunked, we're having those conversations now, and that's some time ahead. So lots of conversations going ahead, lots of key questions. Conversations include Highways England even gritting on our behalf, depending on when those dates may be. So lots of what if scenarios are being played out to cover that. So hopefully that answers that. I'd have to look at Appendix K and I'll check the detail on that. If the word cycle paths and cycle bridges need to be added and changed, then I'll make sure that's done. As Councillor Dupre, the naming of the Jane Costing Bridge, I'll make sure that's corrected as well. And the final thing, Councillor Hartford, for you was the new footbridge at Bar Hill. So yes, we need to have a look at that, how we're going to treat it. Depending on how it's made, it might not be a quad that goes over. It might be an individual with a knapsack using a different chemical that doesn't corrode the metal structure underneath. So a number of our footbridges are treated that way because obviously our structures team don't want us adding to the corrosion of that new asset. So that will be looked into, and hopefully we can respond to you on that separate time. So I hope that's answered your questions. Councillor Kavanagh, you asked about the number of quad bikes we have and whether we had any plans to increase those numbers. So currently we have 2. And as with all our gritting routes, we always build in them, they're designed on the worst case scenario. So if we're ploughing, and believe it or not, those quads have little ploughs on the front of them, we need to know how long that's going to take them to do that. So that means that on a normal day, there's a bit of flexibility to add extra routes in there. So we've got, to answer your question, we have 2 quad bikes. Plans to increase them will only be need to implement as and when we feel that the 2 can't treat the identified cycle routes in the time that, the response time required. But it needn't be quad bikes. We went down the quad bike route because of the security system on the guided busway service track. There were some small gates that meant that a small vehicle had to go there, but it may be, if quad bikes aren't suitable in the future, we'll look at another piece of apparatus that can maybe do a longer treatment run. So hopefully that's answered yours. And then Councillor Dupre, the budget one, I might call in my colleagues, Richard Lumley and Graham Hughes, to make some comments on that. You asked about decision makers. So we've got a small team of decision makers, and it's certain individuals that that really want to do that or not. It's not something we can force people to do. There needs to be an appetite for it. And a decision maker on a bad week of weather, they could be up 24 hours looking at the forecast in that period. So that's the sort of individual that we need. We have four forecasts in a 24-hour period, and those individuals need to look at that. And they need to have gone through the training and passed it, and there needs to be some understanding of meteorology. Although our forecast can be very, very complicated, we're really looking at when is it going to be cold, when is the hazard, and therefore when do we need to send the gritters out. We encourage any new staff into my team to join that side of things, and where we've got junior staff, we will get them to sort of buddy up with a more senior individual and try and get through a season. That's just a challenge for us, ongoing. We're very lucky. We've got some people who've been here a number of years who've been doing it. So ongoing challenges with the individuals, and you would have seen that we've also got some individuals from Skanska who do it for us. So we've tried to expand who can do that bit of work for us. We can speak to our forecast providers, and we can set our intervention levels wherever we want. So those forecasts we receive in Cambridgeshire are custom built for us and for our intervention level. We could say we want to go gritting at +1 degrees, +2 degrees, +0.5 degree, or 0, or as in previous years, we will make that decision ourselves. So there's some flexibility there. We think currently we've got it right at +0.5. I mean, +0.5 degree is a very small amount, but that gives us that factor of safety. That's very similar to lots of our neighbouring authorities. So we're part of a winter maintenance consortium, and we look to them for support and make sure we're not doing anything that we shouldn't be doing, and we're following best practice. So hopefully that's answered the decision making, but it is a very it's quite a pressurized environment, as you could imagine. When we have a 1 week of snow, as we did a few years ago, that person is really got their back against the wall. Then you asked about how do we make volunteering more appealing. I mean, that I would say, okay, you've done the maths on the winter. I don't know how many people take up our highways volunteering scheme. So we've tried to make it as interesting as possible by providing plant, providing PPE, by providing training. We've got over the insurance hurdle. As long as people fill in a risk assessment form, which is very short, they're covered by our insurance. And we've taken our stall to the county's annual volunteer conference a number of years now and tried to sign people there. So we've looked at where the dedicated audience would be, and we've done our very best to encourage people to join us. And I think those that do really enjoy it. And I think there's a number of councillors who do that, and we're very grateful for them. So any ideas that you would have, or anybody would have, where we can encourage or increase that, we'd be more than welcome to receive those and look into those further. Then you said about the agreements with the district. So there aren't any formal agreements. We obviously work very closely with our with the district councils and the town councils and the parish councils. Historically, when they haven't been able to carry out certain functions, if there's been snowfall, then they've been able to carry out some winter maintenance duties for us. That is in, depending on the season. If we have a few seasons of pretty mild weather and a mild winter, then maybe those individuals and those connections can maybe not be as strong as they need to be. But There aren't any formal agreements. We do deliver salt to districts. We will have conversations with them. It sounds like there's some work that we need to do in your area, in particular there, Lorna.
Okay, can I just actually ask Graham Hughes or Richard Lumley if they wish to add anything? Well, I think one of the questions was about budget and money. So is there anything, Richard or Graham, you wish to add to what John has already said, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'll just pick up the point around the budget. As Councillor Dupre alluded to when she introduced her questions, the winter budget is an extremely complex budget, and a lot of work has taken place over the sort of last 12 to 18 months, getting to the bottom of how the budget is made up and the costs for delivering the service, both in terms of fixed cost and variable cost, which are dependent on the severity of a particular winter. We have taken, I mean, ultimately, we have learned the lessons from that work and accepted that previously we had under forecast the cost of delivering the winter service, and therefore had to correct that budget. It's not captured in detail in this report, primarily because this report is very much around the operational aspects of what we need to do to actually deliver that service. Having said that, I completely appreciate that the two do go hand in hand. We need to ensure we've got the right budget in order to deliver the service. As John has picked up on, there are a number of challenges within winter, not least the sort of the addition of extra lengths of network, and we are currently working on the current putting in place a new contract for our gritting fleet as well, where the current contract ends in a year's time. So there are opportunities to make sure that we are getting best value for money in winter, and part of that work is very much taking on board the lessons that we've learned from the discussions that we've had and the work we've done over the last 12 to 18 months.
Thank you. Can I now move on? We've got 3 more speakers, and then I'm intended to finish that debate and go to a vote. So Simon King, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question on 5.6. You mentioned, Jonathan, about volunteers gritting footpaths and cycleways. I represent a principally rural area, and I thought we also encourage volunteers, particularly amongst farmers, to actually grit the highway as well. And I know a couple within my division that do that, and I just thought it should be mentioned in the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Mark Howe. Mark, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, a couple of bits and pieces. First of all, can I ask, I think I read somewhere on the report that this will be put on the website for everybody to look at. Can I ask, please, that when that is done, that all the appendices are put on the website as well? One in particular, in appendix, I was looking at, or I wanted to look at. I don't need to have any answers. And if it's on the website, I can look at it there. Thank you very much indeed. With regards to the grit and salt bins, which you got under 11 or 11.2, thank you very much indeed for that. That is really appreciated, the work that you do there. I know most parishes rely upon them. One of my parishes seem to have an abundance of them. They've seemed to have gone overboard over the years, but we are prepared should we ever get some more snow. That is excellent. And with regards to parish volunteers, well done for trying to do it. It's very difficult because the myth of this, the insurance is there, and it's what you hear all the time, and trying to overcome those myths are very, very difficult when people think they're going to be sued for clearing outside the front of their house or shop. So that is very good, but obviously something we want to increase and build upon. Can I just say, as a very small thing, I don't know if it has to be official, but myself and of course you, Chairman, are members of ESPO as behalf of this council, and that was mentioned in part of the contract. So we will just mention that now because it's being recorded as well. But yeah, no, thank you very much indeed for this report.
Thank you. The last speaker is Councillor Manning. Ian, over to you, please.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief, Chair. So thanks very much for the report. I think I acknowledge completely this is a vastly complex problem, as Richard was alluding to. That I think my concern, like Councillor Dupre, is we don't currently have a complete handle on it, which is why I would not want to oppose this report, because I know it's difficult, but I feel like I can't completely support it. For example, I mean, I think the question that Councillor Dupre asked about decision maker recruitment, I think we understand the problem, and you've explained, Mr. Clark's explained the problem very eloquently. The issue is what do we do to try and solve that problem? And it may be that all other counties near us haven't solved that problem, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a solution out there we could try and find. The second thing I was just going to say was that as Councillor Kavanagh said, we've had a number of cycleways put in recently. And we all know the kind of the Fendon Road roundabout doesn't seem to be on the gritting routes, and it's not going to help us as a council to be putting a superb new piece of infrastructure that we should all be really congratulated for, and then it gets all icy and isn't gritted. I can almost anticipate the kind of comments that are going to come back from those people who are, for whatever reason, implacably opposed to that project, which, as I say, was excellent, when we find it isn't gritted. So it seems to be, what I can ascertain is it seems to be that we have the identified routes, we then put in new infrastructure, and we only grit the identified routes which aren't the new infrastructure, because when we identified the routes, the infrastructure wasn't there. I would have thought it'd be a matter of course that we put some new major infrastructure in that's added to, or at least considered to be added to, the identified routes. And just the final point about the volunteering, I think first of all, it's odd, and I think that's been acknowledged, actually, that it's a bit odd that we have a formal agreement with volunteers, but not with district councils. And I understand there may be historical reasons for that, but it does need to be sorted out. And in the city, I noticed the form mentions parish councils, so we might get some more volunteers because if you fill a form in and you work in Cambridge, you live in Cambridge City, and it says identify your parish council who supports you, you'll probably get a bit confused. But just as a positive suggestion for the officers, there is this massive network of mutual aid groups across the county that sprung up in the COVID pandemic. I wonder whether on this point and on another of points that are cross council issues where we seek volunteers, that we could go to those mutual aid groups and say, look, this is something that's coming up in winter. A number of them I know are actually asking me actively what can they get involved in, and I'm trying to come up with ideas for them. Going to them and saying, would any of you be interested in gritting in winter, would be exactly the sort of thing that the people who are enrolled in those mutual aid groups would be very keen to do, because it's about looking out for the most vulnerable, isn't it?
Okay, thank you. Just as a point of interest, I have actually contacted Steve Criswell. Thinking Communities, I think, fits nicely with some of the suggestions in respect of volunteers. I am a volunteer, as you might say, and we do have some salt bins where I live. So I think I have contacted Steve Criswell to see if that can be an avenue to explore, and I would suggest members on that committee of all parties perhaps wish to consider that. Other than that, John, I think over to you for the questions, and then I'll just come back to finish off the debate and go to a vote. Thank you. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Councillor King, about volunteers, specifically Farmers on Highway. Yeah, I'd say they are specialist volunteers, and there are a number. You mentioned a number in your area. I know of one other, a dairy farmer who's very keen to get the milk away from his farmyard, and so we've worked with him, and he volunteers and treats that road. So I would say yes, we're willing and open to talk to anyone who wants to volunteer in whatever capacity. Vehicles on the highway, we just need to make sure that they meet the requirements, as you'd expect, that they're visible, insured, etc. So if anybody knows of any others, then we're more than happy to have those conversations and see if we can get that up and running.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Okay. Councillor Howard, the website, yes, we'll make sure that those appendices are on there, and the correct ones are on there. Grit bins, you mentioned, so that's good. Yes, we're shortly going around and we'll start making sure that they're all usable, filled up, all the litter has been cleared out of them. And thank you for your comments about the volunteers. Councillor Manning, the Fendon Road roundabout is on the gritting route, and we're very fortunate that some of the drivers of the gritters work in different parts of the organisation, and we've got a number of keen cyclists who actually do the gritting in Cambridge City. So, you know, I can assure you that that will be done, and it will be done like all our roads to a very high standard. The decision making, there are a number of different ways that can be done. That you can procure a computer program that will tell you when to go gritting, but that's possibly a leap of faith and a bit too far. And I think it's nice to have a human doing it, and for Graham and Richard to be able to phone me up and talk about the weather that I can see in front of me. So yes, we have challenges. Currently train and recruit those. I accept your comment. We're interested in Cambridgeshire, and the fact that everybody else may have challenges, that isn't possibly an answer to your question. But I think they're challenges we're always going to have, and we'll always just keep working with them, trying to recruit the correct people, trying to encourage people into our team, and assist them and train them, and through that process. And I think your third point was about the volunteers and the mutual aid group. So I need to find out how to contact them. But we will change our, we can alter our winter maintenance volunteer pamphlet to encourage more people in. So it's, as I said earlier, it's something we're trying to do, looking for a help with it. So, you know, any suggestions, we'll gladly take them, and we'll work through with those. So hopefully that's answered those points made. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, members. Now I'd like to move to the vote, and the vote actually is to approve the winter service plan for 2020-21 for winter gritting season. So that is the recommendation within the report. So therefore I will go to the vote. I'm looking at any hands that are not in favour of that recommendation. Councillor Dupre, you're putting your hand up. I will then, I think, go to a vote. Councillor Manning, right. I will then now go to the vote and call out all individual names of members, and then if you could indicate, please, the way you wish to vote. So we'll do the same again. Councillor Connor.
Approve.
Councillor Dupre.
Abstain.
Councillor Fuller.
For.
Councillor Hartford.
For.
Councillor Howell.
Agreed.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Approve.
Councillor King.
For.
Councillor Manning.
Abstain.
Councillor Taylor.
Abstain.
And myself, Councillor Bates, in favour. Can I ask then Democratic Services to record those votes accordingly? Do you wish to read them out now? Either Rob or Dan, I think you've got 3 abstentions as far as I can see.
2
the rest were in favour.
8 in favour, 2 abstentions. So the recommendation.
3, I think it's 3 abstentions, Rob. Councillor Dupre, Manning and Taylor were abstaining.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it is. You're right.
Okay. So
that's 7-3. Sorry.
Okay, 7-3. Thank you, members. I think if we like to move on to item 6, please. That is the A414, the St Ives Transport Strategy, and think the report is going to be introduced by Matt. We have one speaker on this, which is Councillor Reynolds, when Matt has introduced the report. So over to you, please, Matt, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. The only thing I'd add at the start is Lou Mason-Walsh and Steve Newby are the technical leads on this on the call. I'm not sure they've been added on to the participants yet, so if whoever's in charge of that side of things could add them in case someone wants to query the modelling and such, which often is the sort of bone of contention with these sorts of things, that would be helpful. In the meantime, I will introduce the report. So thanks, Chair. This report outlines the results of the options assessment report for the St Ives and A141 study. You'll recall that these are two studies, one funded by Cambridgeshire County Council, the St Ives element, and one funded by the Combined Authority, the A141 element. And we ran these in parallel due to the interdependency on the network and the close proximity of them both. And we did this with one singular member steering group with a membership from sort of the two key areas of St Ives and the Huntingdon area. And then we also combined the transport modelling tools that we produced and used so that both studies were interdependent in that respect too. The CPCA recently took a paper to their board, which we linked to in our report, outlining the main findings of the A141 aspect of the study, namely that a new single carriageway bypass, similar to the alignment that was in the old Cambridgeshire LTTS, long-term transport strategy from a few years back, is the most beneficial piece of infrastructure for Huntingdonshire in terms of delivering growth above what is already included in their current local plan. The work that on the A141 also ruled out a third river crossing between Huntingdon and St Ives as part of a scope change during the study that the CA wanted. The CA have committed to leading and funding the next phase of the A141 work. This paper focuses more on the St Ives conclusions and outlines a package of options which we have been testing to help support the new outer A141, and we consider a range of options to help mitigate existing congestion issues as well. So these options include cycling and walking improvements, along with junction improvements and alterations to the current road layout along the key A1123 and A1096 corridors, and on roads connecting these corridors through St Ives Town Centre. The key recommendations for the St Ives Transport Study are an introduction of a 20-mile-per-hour zone on roads in the town centre area, with physical measures proposed to achieve this or recommended. Introduction of traffic signals at the junction of the A1123 and B1040 Somersham Road. A right turn ban from Needingworth Road northbound onto the A1123 St Audrey Lane, and various junction priority changes to support these. We should add that the offline single carriageway A141 option was also considered with regard to the impact on junctions in St Ives, and concluded that with this analysis that the localised junction improvements were not sufficient to mitigate the impact of future levels of growth, i.e. those above the current levels in the Huntingdonshire local plan, and therefore a more strategic solution will be required to help mitigate this. The CPCA have committed in their paper that I mentioned earlier to funding this study for a strategic solution. This report also details the various quick win solutions for St Ives, which are appended to the report. These are made up of a town centre parking review, a bus service accessibility review, and pedestrian and cycling wayfinding audit, and have a number of measures included within those. It is proposed to submit all of the St Ives measures to the Combined Authority with worked up and a costed programme, and to request funding, which, if agreed, would mean that these measures can move into delivery, again, following usual processes and consultation. We are asking members to endorse the results of the A141 study and approve the list of proposals identified for submission to the CPCA for funding and for consultation and delivery should this funding be secured. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I have got now Councillor Reynolds. Good morning, Kevin. Hopefully you can join the meeting now. So over to you, Kevin, to speak.
Thank you, Chairman, members. I will be very brief, and I fully understand and appreciate this is the start of the process. There was a local members briefing late on a Friday afternoon towards the end of August, which I was unable to attend because of the time it was. So this is my first bite of the cherry, so to speak. And in doing so, to just try to set a scene in St Ives where the main problem areas are and the pinch points. And I point to Morrison's, McDonald's, Aldi's, and what's known as the Silvarco roundabout. And that really is a big pinch point. There is one other, but just keep that in your mind at the moment. And the reason I bring this to your attention is that is where traffic comes from the surrounding villages, but not only the surrounding villages, but also Fenland. It's the main route through to Park and Ride, the guided bus, and to the A14. So it's quite a significant pinch point. In all the recommendations, they all seem quite reasonable, but the one I have the biggest problem with, and it will be one that I'll be resisting all through the process, is the no right-hand turn into Needleworth Road. And the reason I'll be resisting that is because it will be pushing traffic further along into the pinch point at Silvarco roundabout. The problem is particularly acute at commuter time, as you would understand. And the other point I'd just bring to the officer's attention at this stage is, unless I've missed it in the report, and I have only scan read it, the other pinch point is the Meadow Lane roundabout. Now, I wasn't sure if that was where you were referring. That's the roundabout where you go down to the Park and Ride, by the way, where you come out of the town centre, the back of Waitrose almost. I wasn't sure if that's where you're suggesting the traffic lights go, because it's a very small roundabout and it just doesn't cope with the amount of traffic at commuter time. And that's all I've got to say at this stage. And thank you, Chairman, for giving me the time.
Thank you, Kevin. And I will now ask our other members if they've got any questions. So I've got some hands up, Kevin. So if you'd like to listen on, as they say, just as a matter of interest, your cat is moving quite well in the background. So the first question is from Councillor Manning. Ian, over to you, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'll take just because this picks up on a point that Councillor Reynolds made about that right turn. We are now seem to be in a world sort of in the post-COVID thing where we're quite keen on using experimental traffic regulation orders for things. And we did have a motion agreed earlier this year before the COVID thing about trying to use them more in large schemes like this. So I think there are some opportunities there, because obviously I've no idea, because I don't have the same sort of intimate knowledge of the local area that Councillor Reynolds does, whether what he said is true. But it would clearly be a way you could, he's making an assertion, the modelling says maybe it's a different thing. Doing that no right turn as an experimental order would be an ideal way of testing what the impact is without it necessarily being having the worry of getting opposition because it would be a permanent thing automatically. So I'd interested if he would be interested in considering that. I'd be interested if the officers could just answer a sort of point about the CPCA report in the modelling section makes reference to this CSRM2 model, and it aligns with the Huntingdon local plan. Does that align with, is that the Huntingdon local plan that exists or the one that's currently being updated? And if it is not the one that's currently being updated, how do we factor that in with all the housing growth? And if they could also, on the second point around the modelling, I was wondering maybe if you were using Paramix for this, but whether that's Paramix using this model or not, I don't know. But I've just observed that a lot of the interventions all seem to be basically car-based. There doesn't seem to be much about public transport, buses, cycling, walking, which is a feature obviously of the Paramix model. So I would like to suggest to the committee that depending on the officer answer to that question, I'd like to ask the committee if they consider supporting an amendment to the recommendations to add an extra line that would just say, ask officers to ensure that further studies will model options for increased and changed bus, cycling and walking options. If the officer could answer those technical points first, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, understood. I think I'll go to Noel first, and then actually we'll come back and ask, I think, to start with Kevin if he's got any observations, and then perhaps Matt and other officers who are obviously on the call somewhere. So Noel, over to you first for your question, I think, please.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt, for your report. You mentioned in your report at 2.6 that there's planned to be an introduction of a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit across St. Ives town centre. And I think I heard you mention something about digital enforcement. The sound is not great on my laptop, and also I've got a lot of traffic outside. I don't know if I heard that correctly, but I'm raising the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit provision there that you're going to have it in the centre of St. Ives, in the light of the fact that everyone's probably aware that we have 20-mile-an-hour speed limits across the city of Cambridge. And unfortunately, although many motorists do adhere to the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, there are actually a great number who don't. And we are very concerned that, for example, that there is a kind of an indifference from the police about enforcing the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. So I'm raising it at this point that although it is generally regarded as a very good thing by residents to have 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, it is actually very hard to ensure that motorists stick to 20 miles an hour and below 20 miles an hour. And I am raising this now because, as you've stated it in the St. Ives plan, and it would be, I think at this stage, you need to be thinking through how you're going to ensure motorists are going to stick to the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Thank you. I'm not sure that's a question for this committee, mind you, Noel, which is about enforcement, but I think we all understand where you're coming from. So, Kevin, do you want to add anything at this stage, or shall we go to the officers?
If I could just come back on a couple of points very briefly. Councillor Manning, thank you for those comments. I've got a pretty open mind, but past experience has taught me that temporary measures invariably become permanent measures. So I'd be a little bit concerned. And also prevailing COVID traffic doesn't really give us a true picture of the situation, and nobody knows when we're going to get back to normal. But the pinch points I referred to aren't too bad at the moment. It's what they normally are, would I say. And regarding the 20-mile-an-hour limit, haven't got a problem with that. In fact, it's 20 mile an hour now by default, and very few cars, if any, go over 20 mile an hour in the town centre. It's almost impossible to do so. So I've got no problem with that being regularised. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Kevin. So, Matt, there were a couple of questions, I think, or in respect of modelling and the like. Are you able to answer them, or other officers available to answer those, please?
So I'll cover a couple of the questions, and Lou will cover the modelling questions. So if I go first and cover the questions on ETRO and the 20 mile per hour. So at this stage, so take on board Councillor Manning's point about options for ETRO and stuff. We as at this stage of the work, we're not in the discussion how we deliver necessarily the mechanisms for delivery, other than we would need to do some consultation and go through the formal processes. So I think as we move into the next stage of work, we would need to discuss options, and we can cover options for temporary trials and stuff as well. But yeah, like I said, we'd need to do that really in the next stage. We're not at the stage where we'd say we would actually deliver this in X way. And in terms of the Councillor Kavanagh's, I think, who talk about the 20 mile per hour zones, we're not suggesting digital enforcement. It's that maybe my sound was bad. It's actually physical, but designed in measures to help ensure that that people stick to 20 mile per hour. So, you know, maybe you could design the roads and have things like physical measures to stop people driving that fast, or the perception that they can drive that fast, rather than having a digital enforcement, because obviously enforcement is an issue, and like Councillor Bates said, is a tricky issue with regards to different authorities. So I'll pass over to Lou for the modelling questions on the CSRM and Paramix.
Good morning, councillors. Yes, the CSRM2 is the Cambridge sub-regional model, and that is the model that was used to support the adopted Huntingdonshire local plan, and I would assume would be used to support any revised Huntingdonshire local plan. It is the strategic model that covers the Cambridge sub-region, so it covers the whole of Huntingdonshire as well as City and South Cambs, and covers parts of East Cambridgeshire as well. So that is the modelling that was used to write the Huntingdonshire Strategic Transport Study that supports the adopted local plan, and the modelling that has been done in support of the A141 is guiding HDC officers as to what level of development might be possible to the north of Huntingdon should the A141 scheme, as currently proposed, come to fruition. And with regards to the Paramix model, yes, the modelling was done in a two-tier approach, particularly for St Ives, in that we used CSRM for the strategic impact, so the long distance rerouting, where were trips coming to and from, which routes were being used that we didn't necessarily want people to be using, and that influenced the support for the A141 over the Third River crossing. And then for the detailed junction analysis and the town centre proposals, they were tested using Paramix.
Okay, thank you for that. Members might realise that, of course, I am a regular visitor to St Ives, so know the junctions, know this area, know the town centre very well, and certainly know the roundabout that Councillor Reynolds highlighted with Morrison's, Aldi and other takeaways in that location. So I see no other members with their hands up. Oh, sorry, apologies, Councillor Fuller. You came and went. Do you wish to speak or not?
Not as a question, Chairman. I wish to take part in the discussion when we get to that
Okay,
point.
right. So thank you. We're now into the debate. So anybody wishes to add? Councillor Fuller, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I jumped in a bit early there.
Yeah.
As the other member for St Ives, then, albeit St Ives North, so very few of these interventions are actually within my division. They are in Kevin's part of the town. I've chaired this study for the last couple of years now, I think, where we've been doing the extensive work that you see the results of in front of you. And I think it's probably just worth pointing out, you know, what is probably fairly obvious to everyone here, that if we were designing the road layouts of St Ives today on a blank piece of paper, they would look very different to what they currently are, in all honesty. And it's proven extremely difficult to find transformative solutions here that are going to make much of a difference to the congestion issues in and around St Ives. That's why we've got to the stage where we are with these proposals, which will help the situation. But there's quite a frank concession in that study, and the suggested next step of looking at a much bigger strategic transport study via the combined authority, because in all honesty, it's only going to be a much bigger strategic intervention that's really going to properly tackle those issues that Kevin's quite rightly raising, which do blight some people's lives, having to traverse around the Savaca roundabout on a regular basis. We're not pretending that the measures that we're suggesting today are going to solve all the issues in St Ives, because they're not, and that they just can't do that. What the modelling has shown and all the investigations that officers have done over the last couple of years is that they can make a bit of a difference. I do, however, hear Kevin's concerns about Needingworth Road, and I think there will be lots of residents in that part of the town that share his concerns, so he's absolutely right to highlight that here. I presented the paper we've got before us today to St Ives Town Council last week, just made the point, we're at the very start of the process. This is informal discussion now before it comes to Transport Committee at the county. They asked a few technical questions, but broadly they were content with the recommendations on the basis that there would be potential for much greater consultation down the line once we've got some schemes developed. And that's something I really want to stress. I think Kevin's making the same point. We do need to have detailed conversations with Kevin, with district councillors for the town, with the town council and with residents once we've moved this forward beyond the funding ask of the combined authority and we start working up some specific schemes. So I'd like that reassurance, please, Chairman, that we will be able to have that much greater consultation down the line and that these things aren't just going to happen if we agree to progressing it today. Just to touch on Councillor Manning's point about cycling, walking and buses, they are actually, of course, the major part of the quick win schemes that we're suggesting today as well. So the bus package there, for example, will be the most significant investment in bus infrastructure in St Ives that I think any of us have ever seen. Many of the changes are also around helping the buses move quicker along the route by getting rid of those pinch points and the narrow areas and where congestion's happening. So we're trying our utmost to actually encourage people to be able to use buses and to make it more convenient for them to use the buses, which I think will go a great deal to doing that. There's also a big piece of work there around the cycle wayfinding. So I think probably, Chairman, Councillor Manning's points are more than adequately covered in the suggestions, but they're probably tucked away in the quick wins parts of the report. So I'll forgive Councillor Manning if he hasn't managed to get through the detail of all of those, because they're quite substantial reports. I do appreciate, but I think they're covered. I'm not sure we need probably an amendment, but just to say I'm happy to progress as the other division member. I'm happy to progress these to the next stage on the basis that we get that reassurance around proper consultation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. And can I just add, as a lot of my villagers feed into this area, that two things to say. I was very pleased to see East Street on that list, as you might say, for quick wins. I'm fully aware of East Street and the problems of buses, which predominantly get stuck in East Street. It's very, very narrow for members that don't know that particular part of St Ives. And the only other request I've had is that I think there'll be quite a bit of interest in St Ives. I think there will be quite a bit of interest in outside, for instance, Needingworth and Harlywell, which obviously, and Somersham with Councillor Criswell as well. So perhaps the consultation it needs to be on a broader front as well. I'm sure other people will be interested. Councillor Manning, you intimated that you might wish to make an amendment. It is now your opportunity either to do just that or not, as the case may be.
Yeah, Chair, I think I will actually withdraw the amendment. I will just note that I did, just to reassure Councillor Fuller, don't worry, I did read most of the 400-page report that I could manage to keep myself awake through. And it's a great report. I'm not criticising the report, it's just very long, especially when you don't know the area that well. But I think where my comment was coming from is that things like a cycle wayfinding audit, it's not quite the same as building dedicated segregated cycle lanes, which I understand as the usual constraints of an urban area. And I suppose what I'm getting at is, if you look at the sort of the options in the overall bit in the larger report, it starts off with lots of things that do come across a lot like stuff that will improve car use, and then down the bottom you've got bus service accessibility review, cycling pedestrian audit. So that's where my amendment came from, but I'm happy in the spirit of sort of collaboration and not holding things up to not suggesting the amendment, Councillor Bates.
Thank you. So I will now look to the recommendations which are on the papers, which have got A, B and C. I'll take them on block. I'm looking for any hands that are in objecting to any of those. I'm not seeing any hands raised. I therefore take that as unanimous decision to support the recommendations to go forward on this particular item 6. Thank you, members. So if we could perhaps move on, please, to item 7. Item 7 is March Area Transport Study. And I think that is Steve Newby to introduce it. So Steve, can I ask you to introduce the report, please, on the March Area Transport Study Progress Report? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Could I make the request, as Matt did earlier as well, that Matt Bowles stays on the call as well, please, whoever's organising the Zoom meeting. Thank you very much. This report covers a number of things from the March Area Transport Study. If you recall, we came to the E&E committee earlier this year with the finalised options assessment report. And at that meeting, we asked members to note the findings and asked for permission to consult on the schemes that were coming out of that report. Soon after that, as we were preparing to consult in the usual way, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And as a result of that, after discussions and close partnership working with the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority who are funding this study, we agreed to run an online-only consultation for this stage of the work. This was relatively successful, and the initial results from the consultation report are covered here. We ask you to note and comment on these results. You'll see that the results were largely positive, with each option receiving more support than negative feedback. We also cover the quick win schemes within the March Area Transport Study. We've run this element of the study alongside the main work, with close support from MID colleagues here at CCC. The Combined Authority have agreed to fund the delivery of these quick win schemes using budget efficiencies that we've achieved from stage 1 of this work. And we'll also seek additional funding from the CA to construct any remaining schemes that can't be covered by efficiencies from the stage 1 funding. We're asking you to approve this work for delivery. And it's worth noting at this stage that the member steering group have worked with us on these quick win schemes throughout and continue to do so. The third facet of the report is to note the preparation of the strategic outline business case for the schemes outlined in the options assessment report, which were reported to you in March. Again, this has been funded through budget efficiencies from the first stage of the work and was agreed by the March Area Transport Study Project Board after close partnership working with the Combined Authority. This strategic outline business case work is well underway and it should be complete this month. And finally, following on from the strategic outline business case, we would ask you to approve the programme and the costs shown in table 1 and paragraph 2.18 of this report for moving to the outline business case stage. This funding for moving to this stage was approved at the August Combined Authority Board meeting, and we would like to move to the outline business case once a suitable funding agreement with the Combined Authority is agreed. These costs shown here do have risk built into them and additional contingencies, which include for COVID-19 delays, are also included. I think that's it.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Before I open it up for members, apologies for my FOMI. Okay. Matt, do you wish to add anything to this report or what Steve has already said?
No, Steve's covered that nicely, I think.
Okay, fine. Then I think it's open for discussion. The first hand that I see is Councillor Manning, and then I think over to you, Ian.
Thanks, Chair. Just 2 points. The first one in the report mentions kind of improving enforcement against parking in various places. Obviously, we don't have decrim parking in that area, so that would have to be done by the police. I mean, I know it's not anything you can do about, but I'm just wondering if we need to make sure that's factored in so that residents have the right expectation that, you know, although we'll be putting in things that say you can't park in these particular locations, mentioned like the bus stops and things like that, the enforcement won't necessarily improve. I think it's more of a communication point than anything. And the other point, just as a general point, was raised to me that this business where cross-county rail are reducing their services, which several residents are sort of lobbying me that will affect, because March is the sort of the major station in the area. I'm wondering whether, Chair, we could do something like writing as the committee from you to Cross County to express our regret that they're making this reduction in service. I know it's something the local MP's been fighting as well.
Okay, perhaps I'll just, before I bring in Councillor King, pick that particular point up, please. It was at the last Combined Authority Transport and Infrastructure Committee where this issue was raised. It was raised by the Mayor, and if you listen to it, you'll see my input straight after the Mayor. Okay, and I think you'll find, Ian, that's already happened.
Okay, right.
Okay. I think it's fair to say I expressed my frustration, along with the leader of the council as well, Councillor Count's frustration, and the Mayor. So I think you'll find it's already covered here.
If it's already covered, Chair, that's fine.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is go to Councillor King. Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I fully accept that this relates very much to the people of March and to their elected representatives. I just have one concern, and it's under Appendix B, parking, and consider, and I'm quoting, consider removal of Central Island parking spaces as part of a reconfigured road layout for Broad Street. I think that needs to be thought about very carefully for two reasons. One is that there is a shortage of parking in March, and obviously as a rural area, a lot of people have to use their cars. And secondly, I think we need to be very careful about thinking what we're gaining as versus what we're losing. So I have some reservations about the removal of that parking, because I go to March quite a lot, and I have just never seen that as a particular problem. The other thing I would say, just picking up Councillor Manning's point, is I do know the Fenland District Council are looking at the possibility of decriminalising parking, certainly in parts of Fenland, and that would presumably include March. So that's everything, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got no other hands up. So we have got the, oh, sorry, Noel Kavanagh. You'll have to be quicker on your hands, Noel. Noel Kavanagh, please. No.
No, I thought it might be mentioned by someone else, but it's good to see that pedestrians and cyclists are taken into account in this report. Just one plea is that when cycle routes are being considered, and it's very good to see that the 6 schools in March are being investigated from the point of view of creating safe cycling routes and so on. Could we, what made me sort of make this comment was that there is mention of having a shared pedestrian and cycleway route at one point, but when the investigations of possible cycle routes are being undertaken, could we start from the optimum point of looking at the possibility of having segregated cycle routes where possible? I know space can be restricted on certain highways, but if we can start from the point of view of, is it possible to have a segregated cycle way along here? And then if that's not possible, then yes, one will have to accept the fact that there's shared cycleways, shared between pedestrians and cyclists. Thank you.
Okay, I think it deserves Steve and Matt to perhaps come back at that. And for the members, it's in the quick wins report from 2 points 11, 12, 13. And you'll see the roads there of Broad Street, High Street, Station Road, etc., and also in respect of schools as well are mentioned there. So Steve and Matt, can you please pick up some of the questions or the observations about particularly from Noel Kavanagh has just mentioned, please? Thank you.
Yeah, sure, Councillor Bates. Yeah, I'll try and address the questions in order. So, Councillor Manning, your comments about improving enforcement against parking and that being done by the police. Yes, that's parking enforcement in March is done by the police, and as such, it really is in their hands. I think all we can do is try and make and ensure that people don't park in the bus stops, for example. In terms of Councillor King, in terms of removing parking on Broad Street in the central section, this was mentioned as part of one of the quick win schemes. One of the major schemes for the March area transport study is to create a public realm area in Broad Street, and that was one of the options that was under consultation. Doing that would remove all of the parking and create a large area of public realm in Broad Street for the residents of March to enjoy and improve Broad Street in that way. The proposal to remove the parking on its own is part of the quick win schemes and would need to be consulted upon, as indeed would the broader proposals for Broad Street. And Councillor Kavanagh, in terms of the pedestrians and cyclists being taken into account, yes, we do aim to do that. In terms of your comment on starting from the optimum point of having segregated facilities for cyclists, yes, we'll make sure that any of the schemes that we do put forward start from that position.
Okay, thank you. I've got no other members wishing to speak. I'm therefore going to go to the recommendations and a vote. We have the recommendations which are laid out on A, B, C and D, which includes the quick wins in Appendix 1 and B. So we go to a vote. I'm looking to see if there are any objections to that. In hands raised, I see no hands raised at all. I therefore declare that this is unanimous decision that are all in favour of A, B, C and D. So thank you, Steve, and thank you, Matt, for your contributions. And can we then perhaps move on, please, to the next item, which is item 8.
Chair, can I just quickly interject? Yeah. Is it all right? I'm just noticing Amanda Taylor is frozen on the screen and she's not responding on our WhatsApp group. So I'm just going to try and phone her, but please continue. Okay. I'll just, but that's why I'm going away from my screen, just to try and phone her.
Okay, thank you.
It's okay, I am here.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Amanda. Well, if you've departed and back, welcome back. If you've never departed, happy for you to continue. So we will go on to item 8, which is on the agenda, and I think Emma Merton is going to present this. So Emma, could you please respond and report, the annual report, that is. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd also like to introduce today Richard Kingston, Operations Manager from Skanska, who's here to take any questions at the end of the report. Just so that you know, Richard and I are together, but we're social distancing. So the report is covered Cambridgeshire Highways contract, the annual report for 2019-20. The report comes on an annual basis to update the committee on our performance and achievements for that year. And at the end of the report, I'll ask you to note the report in accordance with that. As some of you know, Cambridgeshire Highways is a partnership between Cambridgeshire County Council and Skanska. The contract commenced in July 2017. We deliver a number of highway activities, both maintenance, transport projects and new infrastructure in Cambridgeshire. We also support Greater Cambridge Partnership and the Combined Authority. I'd just like to take you through some of our key highlights through our report. We have the committee paper, but also the annual report that outlines in more detail what ourselves and Skanska as Cambridgeshire Highways has achieved last year. So some of the key headlines are our contract KPIs. We achieved 78% of those to target. Of the 18 that we have, 4 didn't meet their target. Some of those were to do with schemes not meeting their target cost to the actual. Street works, fixed penalty tickets, final accounts agreed within 3 months of works completion. One I'm pleased to say we are now performing on is where percentage of schemes are delivered to the agreed programme between the parties. From the contract, we achieved 1.7 million savings or efficiencies. We capture efficiencies both cashable and non-cashable throughout the year. One thing that we're very proud of is our health and safety record is very good. We obviously prioritise health and safety of our employees, supply chain, and of course members of the public. We had no loss of time incidents since September 18, and suffice to say, we have had no HSE notifiable incidences since the start of the contract. At the end of the year, obviously COVID-19 hit us, but I'd like to say that we have been working collaboratively throughout that period to try and ensure that we maintain a service within Cambridgeshire. From that, we obviously annexed to the report our annual highway review, which covers a number of our achievements throughout the year. The executive summary covers a number of highlights to the contract, and some of those aspects I'd just like to walk you through now. We do an annual survey, which comes out to members and key stakeholders. We also engage with a lot of SMEs throughout the county. We have a number of dragon patches, velocity patches, as you know, running through the county, and it outlines some of their achievements from last year. Within the contract to Cambridgeshire Highways throughout the year, we also get awarded additional money from the Department of Transport. As Cambridgeshire Highways, we delivered an extra £3.3 million worth of work. I'd also like to say that we as a partnership have started working on some more major projects. Some key successes last year was the extension to Trumpington Park and Ride, and we also commenced on the Histon Road project. Looking forward, we obviously are prioritising things around the environment, our carbon strategy, and we're taking that forward as a business together. We also have community initiatives such as our Social Value Fund, which comes from the performance of the contract, and we'll shortly be seeking some more options for that. And as a bigger picture in terms of education, we work very hard to engage as STEM ambassadors, and we also contribute to community projects. So that's a summary of the current 2019-20 year, but I'm happy to take any questions from that, and the report is really for the committee to note.
Okay, thank you, Emma. I note you said that Richard Kingston was there. Richard, welcome.
Hello there. Sorry.
Do you, from your social distancing position, do you wish to add anything, please?
No, I think Emma covered all the points that we'd like the committee to note.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Richard, and thank you, Emma. I think just for members, and I'll open up the debate in a minute, that Mark Howell, myself as chairman and vice chairman, had a visual health and safety view of a scheme which was a local highways initiative done in Falmere, where Mark and I observed it visually. They had a camera about the health and safety of the staff and the employers in that particular project, and it was very successful and most encouraging to see the staff doing the health and safety checks and looking after the public and the staff that were delivering that particular project. It was a local highways initiative in Falmere. I'm now going to open it up for debate, and they have got 3 speakers to date. Councillor Manning, you're first.
Thanks, Chair. I'm obviously quick on the trigger finger with the hands today, aren't I? So just 3 points around the KPI, which relates to the percentage of schemes delivered to the agreed programme dates. I'm assuming this covers sort of all schemes, so it would cover things like LHIs, and it would also cover major projects. I question how this is measured slightly, because, and maybe it's just there's more detail that isn't presented in the report, but in 10 years as a county councillor, I've never been given a expected delivery date, a definite expected delivery date for an LHI scheme, and I've had a number of those go through in my division. Likewise, for some of the major projects that I've been involved in, for perfectly good reasons, the dates of delivery have changed, and perfectly understandable reasons. But I've never really experienced a situation there was a definite delivery date that we then acknowledged slipped. And again, I'm not necessarily making criticism of the way those projects were run, but it's very easy to see how some members of the public can lose confidence in things if a date is kind of never really formally announced and then moved a lot, and then they see a stat that says we're meeting whatever the percentage in the report is of delivery dates. So I'd appreciate just some comments from officers on that. Second point, in 210, it's just a sort of pedantic point about how it mentions a stakeholder survey going out to county councillors, parish councillors and town councillors Obviously, Cambridge City isn't parished, so can we make sure that goes out to, that includes district councillors? I do wonder sometimes if we need a generic phrase that just includes all councillors at certain levels, so we don't have to have this endless sort of thing, which I realise is no one's fault. It's the structure of the county. Yeah, sorry, that was my 2 points.
Okay. Yes, I'll try, while everybody else is speaking, to come up with a generic. Thank you. Linda Harford, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of quick points. First of all, I thought it more appropriate to raise a point from the action log that's relevant to this item at this juncture. So there is an outstanding action from the 16th of January 2018, which says discuss with Skanska the feasibility of offering an enhanced pothole repair service. And that's been on hold. And whilst I understand that there have been valid reasons for that, I do think that that is something that needs to be reinstated as soon as possible. And then my other point is at paragraph 2.2, I notice reference to the council making claims for compensation, and I'm again going to make the case in relation to that for a new policy regarding compensation, for example, for developer damage. I absolutely resent this council having to continually make efficiency savings in order to subsidise the financial benefits accrued by developers. And I'm sorry to keep pressing that point, but I feel so strongly about it. It's something that the county council is constantly picking up. Its LHOs are stretched enough without having to deal with the absolute slipshod performance of some developers. So I would ask for that to be considered. And very lastly, I'm delighted, obviously, about the Social Value Fund. Could we possibly have details of the community initiatives that were supported through that fund this year? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. And next speaker, I'll come back to both Emma and Richard when other two members to speak, and that the next one to speak is Lorna Dupre. Lorna.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got three questions I would like to ask. The first one is about 2.5, which talks about, in terms of contract performance against KPIs, 4 of the 18 KPIs did not meet their target. And it says that while this is consistent with last year, it's not a case of performance remaining consistent, but other things intervening. I wondered whether it was the same for KPIs that were not meeting their target in 2018-19 compared to 2019-20. And if it is those same 4 KPIs in both years, does this represent intractable issues that we need more in-depth reports on? Is my first question. My second question is about the staff survey that was done, that's mentioned in the appendix, and it talks about the internal communications being highlighted as an area for improvement. I think that's probably something that many of us who have engaged with highways will recognise as being our experience, and I don't mean that to denigrate, but just to reinforce the point that's made in the appendix. And I wanted to say how concerned I am at the appearance of the team being very, very stretched indeed. Obviously, there's been COVID as an intervening issue, and I know a huge number of highways staff were taken off their day jobs and put on to supporting the COVID effort, and that's absolutely laudable and right. But it seems to me that even that aside, we are seeing a very stretched team that really does need to be reviewed to see what we can do about those systemic pressures that it seems to me are affecting the team. And the third point that I wanted to make is also in the appendix about the coloured table and the KPI performance. It's on page 144 of the agenda bundle, and there are the 4 KPIs that aren't green there. And I wanted to point out that there's some very significant variations between target and annualized score in those, not least the one about non-compliance and street works permits, which the target is 5% and the annualized score is 43%. And I recognise that it says that's a focus area for 2020, but that's a very large difference, and I would welcome more explanation about what's actually at the root of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dupleix. The next speaker is Councillor Mark Howe. Mark.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Just a question really, with regards to the health and safety. It's recently come to my attention that if you wish to go onto a building site of any description, you have to pass a particular test, CSCS card, I believe it's called, and part of that qualification to get the CSCS card is to pass the health and safety test. Do the contractors, and for that matter our own staff, have to do something similar, where they have a card or something else which shows that their health and safety proficiency has been tested? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think I've got no other hands raised at the moment. Noel, you're coming in late every time. Noel Kavanagh. Go on, Noel. Let's have all the questions, I think.
All right, I'll try and break that habit. It's under, I suppose, communications. I mean, thanks very much for this report. You know, very good, very comprehensive. It's, I suppose this observation comes under process and communications. I mean, what I have here in Cambridge, it's kind of persistent complaints from residents about how we have contractors, from the point of view of the residents in many ways, just turning up and starting projects, what is perceived as being in a very unplanned way. I mean, we seem to have, how to say, multiple contractors working on the same streets sometimes. And I sometimes wonder whether the county council sort of needs to have more of a clearer plan about what is going to be happening on our streets. For instance, you know, you have City Fibre at the moment working in my constituency, and it's also, it seems to clash on this with, you know, the gas company also working as well. So I wonder whether there is a need for looking at communications between contractors and the county council, so that there is, you know, a team which has a clear view of what is happening at any one time in our specific districts, because there just seems to be a bit of an overlap, and which causes quite a lot of problems for our residents, you know, where they go from. Anyway, I think you're getting the gist of what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think, Noel, we've all suffered a little bit of what I call the gas company coming one day, the water the next day, and the electricity the day after, and the sewage day after that. So I think your point is well made. I have no other questions, so I think it's now time really to go to Emma and Richard. I think over to you. I think some of the issues, there were more than one about the KPIs that were brought to your attention. So if you can start to perhaps address some of the queries and the questions which members have raised, please. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll take it in order. So Councillor Manning's points first, around the KPIs and the expected delivery dates. We have an annual plan on the contract that tries to plan out what we're going to do in the year. As I'm sure you're all aware, there's a number of factors to change that, but we do also have a communication plan on the contract. So I'm happily take those points you've raised and discuss that within the service to see how we can better roll that information out. The contract does order work in a planned way, so I hope that there's a way where we can actually better advise you in terms of the scheme type work that we do, especially, I think, Councillor Manning, you mentioned LHIs and major projects. As you're probably all aware, it's a little harder to do with the quantum that we have for reactive maintenance, but we'll try and look to see how we can best deploy the communication plan we have on the contract to better advise and inform you all accordingly. In terms of trying to capture all the tiers of local government that we all work with, I take Councillor Manning's point. We have had a small working group of councillors where looking at KPIs, but also stakeholder engagement. And I'd like to thank those councillors who have been proactive and input into that process. It's really helpful to officers. But yes, I can assure you that we will be engaging with the city, and we're trying to look at smart mechanisms of actually, especially during COVID, how we get that message out to everybody that actually your opinions matter to us, as do those local communities. So we want to make sure we get something really positive back. I'd actually like to call on some of my colleagues to try and respond to Councillor Harford's questions. You mentioned that there's going to be an action group for pothole repairs. Richard, I don't know if you can help with that one.
Yes, no problem, Emma. Thanks for raising that, Councillor Harford. It is something that has sort of been on the back burner, and what I will do though is take that away from this committee meeting and get those discussions taking place again, so that we can actually come back to you with a viable proposal on what is or isn't possible around an enhanced service for pothole repair.
Thank you. And the next one was compensation for developer damage and how that's linked to our service. I don't know if something that Graham or Richard Lumley also could maybe come back on, because that does affect the whole of P&E. Otherwise, I'll happily take that point away and get something back for you.
If I could just come in,
Chairman, through you, I think we're probably...
Yeah. Okay, Graham, please.
Yeah, no, sorry, Chairman. All I was going to say is I think probably that is, as Emma says, is a wider issue, and I think probably, and it's a very good point that's been raised. I think we best to look at that and then come back to members just to report back. So there are various things in hand.
Can I just support that particular action that Councillor Hartford has raised? It is an ongoing problem throughout the county where developers come on, and often they're the small developers as much as the larger developers. So, you know, it's perhaps one house or two houses or three houses or more. So I think it covers all of those. So can I please ask for that to come back and at a later date? So I think we're then on to similar ones, which are KPIs as well, Emma, which I think was raised by Councillor Duplay.
Yeah, we've got one more for social value funds. So
yes.
If I could just update them with our conversation, Chairman. We did have an initiative. So the first year, I'll happily share with you, Councillor Harford, an update on the social value fund. For the second year, we had an initiative that then we didn't take forward, but for a number of reasons, we've worked with Councillor Bates with a view that we'll be looking to actually gain more suggestions in the autumn time. What happens is it's just purely, we invite staff where they've actually been brought to their attention a community initiative that normal budgets cannot cater for. So outside our normal budgets, they're the sorts of schemes that if it's been raised to a member of either Skanska or the County Council staff in their duties, they're the sorts of initiatives we look to take forward. So some of the old ones with traffic management training for events organisers, where they're volunteers, and we've done an awful lot with the Road Victims Trust and then getting young people back into work, especially care for children, and other educational initiatives to give people that independence and that start in life. So we try and actually align it with the social value initiatives of the County Council, and they're the sorts of things we look to take forward. In terms of Councillor Dupree's comments, so just to appraise you, we have had a small member working group looking through the KPIs. Councillor Howe is helping and leading on that, and it's something we are taking forward with councillors from a previous committee meeting to do a deep dive into the KPIs and how they work. So there's a number of committee members that are helping with that, and then obviously, if appropriate, we can share that more widely with the committee overall. The staff survey, that is done on an annual basis also, and then we try and gather and collect the outcomes of that to see how we can best improve on the contract. In terms of the teams being overstretched and during COVID, I'd like to thank those members who have also supported us as staff in trying to do what we needed to during that time, but maybe Graham Hughes or Richard could come back on the resourcing issue. And then we'll happily discuss the street work permits. Maybe Richard Kingston would be able to give you an outline of that. So Richard, did you want to do street work permits first, and then I'll come back to the resourcing at the end?
Yeah, the councillor was perfectly right in questioning the actual response to the FPNs. Since that time, so starting in the end of March, which there was a lot of things happening at the end of March, we've trialled a new notification process in one of the depots, which has it was around closing out notices within the specified time, and we were failing on certain aspects of that. So what we've done is trialled that in one depot down at Whittlesford, and which has proved quite successful. So though the percentages starting this financial year, April 2020, have significantly improved over the last few months, and now we're rolling it out into one of the other depots. So we are actively working on that FPN process. So hopefully the report this time next year will show a significant improvement on those figures.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Richard Lumley or Graham Hughes, do you want to add something, I think, to this discussion, please, in answer to the questions that members have raised?
In terms of staff resources, yes.
Staff resources, yes, yeah, and the survey, etc.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, in terms of staff resourcing, it is a sort of a constant balance, really. The staffing that is in place, I mean, at the moment we are fully resourced within our local highway officer teams. But we have had periods where we've had a number of vacancies, and that has therefore had an impact in terms of the service that we've been able to deliver and putting additional pressure on remaining staff. Clearly, responding to COVID with a number of staff being redeployed added further pressure. But we do try to strike a balance in terms of the amount of resource we have with the budget available and the work that is required. I think it is a piece of work, an ongoing piece of work, really, where we can look to our partner, our relationship with Skanska, and see where we can improve process, where we can take some of that pressure off the frontline staff to enable them to do exactly what is absolutely necessary. I think there are pockets of inefficiency that we do need to address. So I think there's no sort of, I suppose, silver bullet for it. It is a challenge. We when we do go out to recruit, there are some areas where we struggle to get interest compared to other areas. For instance, we get a huge amount of interest up in sort of Fenland, but a lot less interest down in City and South. So we are also sort of faced with those challenges of the attractiveness of the role and the location of the role. But it is something we are conscious of, and working closely with our partners to try and improve and take some of that pressure off and going forward.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Councillor Dupre, you've obviously put your hand up. Is there another question you wish to raise, please?
Yes, please, if I may. I just wanted to come back on something that Emma Murden said in response to an earlier question about a working group working on the KPIs and, if appropriate, bringing them back to committee. I think working on KPIs is actually a really important function of any committee in terms of overseeing what it is we're looking at and how we monitor performance and pick up issues. There are a number of KPIs that I've drawn to the attention of officers who deal with that sort of thing on a far more regular basis than some here today in terms of sort of pulling together all the data. And I've noticed that there are a number that are out of date or could do with looking at again, and I've been collecting that as a list, and I do think that that's something that it is quite important for the whole committee to review. And I wanted reassurance from yourself and perhaps Emma that there is actually a plan to engage the whole committee in reviewing and updating KPIs, some of which are looking very long in the tooth.
I think it's for me as chairman of the committee to give you that reassurance, Councillor Dupre. And I will certainly discuss that with officers about the KPIs. I think it's also fair to recognise the fact that a lot of the staff over the current climate that we're having to live through, of course, have been redeployed, as you well know, into quite extensive numbers. And obviously that has caused some management issues which need to and were addressed at the time. But obviously I think you just have to, dare I say, bear with us a little bit as we get hopefully back to normal. It is something we are, both myself and Mark Howe are aware of and have discussed it with Richard and Skanska team as we go forward. So take the point. Please bear with us.
Thank you, Chair. I did recognise that earlier.
Yes, I know. Thank you. Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a very quick question relating to PIs generally. The KPIs, and I've had a long ongoing discussion about this. The KPIs are very much high level performance indicators. I think we mustn't neglect thinking about the lower level PIs. And I had a meeting with Emma Murden, virtual meeting a little time ago, and that was very useful and informative. So I think that it's not just KPIs, it's also the lower level PIs as well.
Thank you, Simon. I think I concur with your thing, and I think they are all on the website now and available for the public, and it may be something that we need to circulate. So Emma and Richard, do you wish to add anything else? I've got no other further questions from members.
I've got nothing on KPIs. Councillor Howe asked about the CSCS card. Yes, we do. Both Skanska and ourselves have the appropriate accreditation depending on the role and the function you're fulfilling. And then Councillor Kavanagh's last points in terms of communication. I don't know if it's something in terms of work scheduling, but it's a street works matter. I would suggest if it's everybody that works on the network, and we can certainly take those points on board unless Richard Lumley wants to add at this point and feedback to you on that.
Richard, do you want to add anything?
Yes, if I may, please, Chairman. Just to say, as Emma said, it falls under the umbrella of Streetworks coordination, and there is a quarterly meeting known as the Hawk, which is a Highway Authority Utilities coordination group. But essentially, what that does is get around the table anybody that is planning or intending to undertake work on the highway network. So that would be our own works, utility works, City Fibre, to actually discuss and understand each other's proposals and see where we are able to join up. Now, it's not a sort of compulsory meeting, and as with a lot of these things, it depends who actually turns up and who is sent from the relevant organisation. And I'm certainly not saying it's foolproof, but certainly there is something in place that allows us to have those conversations and try and improve efficiency when work is taking place, and also enable us to get information out to yourselves and the public as soon as possible when we've got works confirmed.
Okay, thank you. I've got one hand up and then I'll go to the vote. I think Councillor Manning. Ian,
yeah, sorry, just very brief on that point, Chair, just to follow up on what Richard said. If anyone's not aware, there is a website, one.network. So it's literally one.network, and that has a comprehensive, which should be a comprehensive list of everything going on the highway. It probably relates to that meeting which is talked about, but I would suggest that Councillor Kavanagh, if he's got concern, something I do regularly is try and check things that are going on are actually registered on there. And sometimes you'll find they aren't, and that's because it's emergency and we can't do anything about that. But I think the important point there is to try and work out whether, if you don't know about the One.Network website, it's excellent. You can set up alerts for your division. Maybe it's something we should get out as a sort of message to all members if people aren't aware of it.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. I think what I'll ask Emma / Richard, or the two Richards, should I say, perhaps to take that away and ensure that all members, which would include districts, by the way, and parishes, to bring it to their attention, because there is a lot out there, but not everybody is aware of everything that is out there. So I'll ask them, I think, to action that and perhaps make everybody aware. I'm going to go to the vote now. And the recommendations, and it's to note the 2019-20 Cambridgeshire Highways Annual Report. I'm looking to see if there are any dissent from that. I see no hands raised whatsoever.
Sorry, Chairman, Councillor Manning has got his hand raised.
Sorry, you've come back in, Ian? Sorry.
Sorry, Chair, I wish to abstain on this item.
Okay, well, then I'll read out the names. Okay, so I'll start with Councillor Connor. I'm going to the recommendation. Okay.
Approve, sir.
Councillor Dupre.
Abstain.
Fuller, Councillor Fuller.
4.
Councillor Hartford.
4.
Councillor Howell.
4.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Approve.
Councillor King.
Approve.
Councillor Manning.
Abstain.
Councillor Taylor.
Councillor, I think it would be fair to say Councillor Taylor abstained there. I think that would be correct.
Okay, and myself 4. So I think you have the numbers there, Rob. Would you like to read out the numbers? I think it's 8, 4, and 2 abstentions, if I'm correct.
I'm so sorry. That would be, I think, 3 because Councillor Taylor.
I think it's 3 because Councillor Taylor as well.
Okay, so fine. Thank you.
7-3.
Thank you, members. I'm slightly conscious that it is now gone past 12 o'clock and we have got quite a lot of speakers. So I'm open to suggestions, but my suggestion is that we have a 5-minute break, which is now 5 past 12, and we reconvene at 10 past 12 for the next item, which is item 9. Is it you all content, members, to have a 5-minute break?
Agreed. Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Please come back in at 10 past. Thank you. Dan or Rob, can you please advise me when everybody is back, please?
Everyone is back.
Everybody is back?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So thank you members for the opportunity for a 5-minute break. I think it's most useful. Can I just reconvene the meeting and start with members? I have received 1 petition and 7 requests to speak on this item that have been accepted. There have been more requests that have been made and have therefore regretfully been declined, as they either were too late or they raise similar issues on issues where we have already speakers on those particular issues. And therefore, we will then proceed to those 7 to make the meeting more manageable. Members will have also received a considerable volume of individual emails from parishioners dash residents regarding lorry ban on the B1040, which is currently not included on the present report, but for which there is a speaker. There is also some local members from Cambridge, both for and against proposals for the introduction of model schemes on part of the Arbury Road, and also representation regarding against the Coldham's Lane proposals. Regarding Arbury Road, 2 late petitions are received, and I will now ask Democratic Services to provide a brief, detailed on what has been received from the 2 parishioners. So, Rob, I think would you please like to read out what the petitions in essence are saying, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. One is a petition received from George Vardalakis with over 90 signatures from the local area and with over 300 signatures from the wider Cambridge area, supporting the proposal to limit traffic on Arbury Road East by bringing in a modal filter. One other petition was received from Linny Purr, who is also to be one of the speakers on this report, signed by 95 local residents from the CB4 area with signatures opposing the plans for modal filters to divide Arbury Road.
Thank you. Can we then go to the actual report, and can I therefore at this point ask Jeremy Smith to present the officer report? Following this introduction, I will ask actually members to speak in turn, and the usual will apply. They'll have 3 minutes each. So Jeremy, could you please introduce the report as laid out on the paper at item 9? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The paper before you sets out timescales for consideration of measures implemented using experimental traffic regulation orders from Tranche 1 funding from the Emergency Active Travel Programme, and also proposals for schemes to be developed and implemented using funding from Tranche 2 of the Emergency Active Travel Fund. Firstly, looking at the Tranche 1 timescales, the suggested timescales for consideration of the Tranche 1 experimental traffic regulation orders is set out in the table under paragraph 2.1 of the report. In early November, the GCP and CCC will be undertaking consultation on the 7 schemes undertaken using ETROs in Tranche 1. Other schemes will not be specifically consulted on, but the ability to comment on them by online or by mail will be signposted. So we will still be taking comments, as most of these schemes have been introduced using temporary measures. Therefore, at some point we will need to make a determination as whether we wish to make them permanent, notwithstanding the fact that they aren't schemes that have required traffic regulation orders to implement. The third row of the table shows the dates of the end of the 6-month period after which the experimental traffic regulation order was made, in which changes can be made to the 7 schemes that were implemented with them. The GCP will consider changes that are needed for their schemes that were implemented. For Mill Road scheme in Cambridge, the county will be seeking local member and opposition lead member views to inform discussion of whether changes are needed with the chair and vice chair of this committee under the delegation previously agreed in relation to traffic regulation orders in general. It is proposed that consideration of whether the 7 measures implemented using experimental orders should be made permanent should take place at the October 2021 meeting of this committee, which would allow a clear 6 months after the end of the initial 6-month period for changes to be considered, for further representations and objections to be made to the proposals. Turning to tranche 2, a bid of 2.3 million of funding across the CPCA area, with around 1.66 million for Cambridgeshire and a further £625,000 for Peterborough was made to government. The guidance for tranche 2 is broadly unchanged from tranche 1, and it sees a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver a lasting transformative change in how we make journeys in our towns and cities, to quote directly from the Minister's introduction. It strongly focuses on measures that reallocate road space with physical segregation of cyclists and general traffic, or with reallocation of road space to pedestrians where pavement space is narrowed. Traffic restrictions are one method by which this can be achieved, and pedestrian and cycle zones and modal filters are explicitly identified as ways to achieve this as well. The tranche 2 bid is included in Appendix A to this report, which also includes the list of proposals in Cambridgeshire that sits behind it. I should restate, as we stated for tranche 1, that the timescales we are working to mean that we cannot guarantee in all cases that proposals will be deliverable. The teams that would have undertaken more detailed work are the same teams who have been working to deliver the tranche 1 programme, so I'm sure you see the slight issue we have there, but nonetheless, we do think the programme in front of you should be largely deliverable. The same delegation as was approved for tranche 1 regarding changes to the programme for that tranche is sought for tranche 2, which is for the executive director in consultation with the chair and vice chair of this committee, in discussion with the lead members of the opposition groups, to have that delegation to approve changes to the programme. As with the tranche 1, the tranche 2 proposals were worked up in discussion with the district and city councils and the Greater Cambridge Partnership. I don't propose at this stage to comment on any of the individual proposals in this introduction, as such comment might be more usefully informed by the member discussion following the public speakers, who obviously are going to comment on a number of the proposals. So happy to take any questions during the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I think we'll now move on, members, and that is for me to take the first petition. So Dan, can I see it? I think it's on behalf of the Residents Association of Coldhams Lane, Romsey Residents Association, and I think that is David Trippier, who's talking on behalf of the chairman, Paula Downs. So David, welcome. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, I see your name there, so that's good. David, just a reminder, you have 3 minutes. The Democratic Service Officer will sort of let you know when you're coming to the end. Okay, so thank you for your petition, and it is your time now to speak. So over to you, David.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak in this forum. Firstly, I just wanted to thank the committee for all the work that you're doing under very difficult circumstances. We really do appreciate the effort put in by all. The Coldhams Lane Residents Association represents people living on the lane and the neighbouring streets between the Beehive Centre and the Sainsbury's Roundabout. In August, we conducted a survey about traffic on the lane. It reached 139 local respondents with 128 substantive replies. I'll be referencing this data throughout. Alongside this, I have 2 petitions, I hope, and 2 positive solutions to suggest today. Many of you will know that our lane is a residential road next to a beautiful common. It has a children's playground, a primary school, 2 allotments, a sports field, a nursing home, and soon the wonderful Chisholm Trail. Many families and young children live here. It could and it should be an active, green, healthy community. But the lane has an utterly unmanageable level of motor traffic. This is destroying the community, and with it, most opportunities for active travel. It's commonly used as a shortcut between points on the ring road. It's forced to carry around 17,000 motor vehicles a day, which results in static jams that often snake for hundreds of meters. The resulting pollution aggravates COVID-19 transmission, and it largely disincentivizes any active travel among residents. 68% report concern about air quality. The situation is getting worse with the closure of Mill Road Bridge and the planned addition of between 1,200 and 12,000 new homes on the Marshalls development site. And I'm afraid if this weren't bad enough, there is also a grave speeding problem. A 25-year-old tragically died speeding on the lane in 2009. His name was Lucas. Only this weekend, a woman nearly rammed the children's play area before felling some traffic lights. Residents feel their houses shake when speeding HGVs thunder past. Many are woken at night by motorbikes screaming above 70 miles an hour. There are 409 serious accidents on police record in the last decade. And a speeding survey organized by Councillor Kavanagh demonstrated that over 14,000 vehicles speed every week. The consequences are that the road is not just not so nice, but also uncrossable for pedestrians, particularly the elderly and those with children. One of my neighbors, Ken, would wait up to 20 minutes just to cross to the bus stop. Or there's Alex, who has to dodge traffic with his 2-year-old in his arms just to reach the playground. Countless residents' children can't cycle to school, and I include my own. 43% of adult cyclists feel unsafe because of the wide HGVs, so they go on the pavement. And then a majority of pedestrians find the pavements unsafe, with 1 in 3 reporting that they can't socially distance. So finally, what are the positive solutions? The major headline from our survey was that 89% of residents are asking you, imploring you to reduce traffic. The package you're voting on today includes a trial modal filter for Coldham's Lane, and I urge you to support it. 62% of residents specifically want to stop through traffic. We can also present to you today a petition with over 200 signatures supporting the modal filter. The second part of the solution, more buses. I present to you today a petition for more bus services on Coldham's Lane with 149 local signatures. This would guarantee access to the shops, especially for the disabled and the elderly, some of whom can't drive, while safeguarding business interests. We're in touch with the big supermarkets are in the area about co-funding an electric shuttle that loops around the mall. M&S is already potentially very favourable. My final point, Joe Baker from the Greater Cambridge Partnership spoke to us last week. The GCP is looking for a bus route into the city from the east. They're very interested in Coldham's Lane for this, particularly because it provides residents in the planned Marshalls development a route into the city and an incentive not to drive. Now, our members are overwhelmingly in support of more bus services. So in tandem with a modal filter, this really could work for all parties, for the County Council, for the GCP, and for residents. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, David. Just stay with us, please. This is the opportunity for members to ask you for some clarity. Okay, it's not a question and answer session. So it's for anything that any member on the committee, and I have a raised hand box that I have to look at this point to see if any member is raising a hand. I need a little time to make sure that there are no raised hands, David. So therefore, I wish to thank you on behalf of the committee for bringing forward your ideas and your suggestions, please. So thank you, and please pass on thanks to your committee as well for the work they do, which is greater than one petition, I'm sure, or 2 petitions. So I now move on to public questions, and my first actually is Dave Badgett, who is a city councillor. I'm looking to see, yes, I can see you're there, Dave, somewhere. So Dave, welcome, thank you. And it is over you. You have the same privileges of 3 minutes to ask your questions, and Democratic Services will, if you like, give you a hint when you're getting towards the end. So welcome, Dave, and over to you. I can
Dave, I don't know if you can hear us, but you seem to be on mute still, so we can't hear you.
Is that better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay, I'm very sorry about that. I didn't have any controls earlier.
Okay, no, we can now hear you, Dave, so please progress.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay, no trouble.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak about the proposal for a modal filter partway along Coldham's Lane. It's difficult for a city councillor at these times when we are not part of the county discussion, especially when there are clear divisions of opinion within a ward. The bus gate on Mill Road Bridge is a current example. In terms of reducing pollution and providing a safe environment for social distancing and active travel for the 15,000 or so local residents who can walk, cycle and shop on Mill Road, closure has a clear advantage in an area that primarily serves retail outlets. Although there has been opposition from some traders, my mailbag from residents shows clear support. However, this isn't the same for the possibility of a modal filter partway down Coldham's Lane, which is wholly residential. Residents in particular of Thoday, Sedgwick, Catherine, Brampton, Cromwell and Cavendish Roads are raising considerable concerns that this will create significant and dangerous rat running like ants through the narrow back streets of Romsey in order to bypass the filter. In addition to the specific concerns of my ward, I believe that as a major route through from the A14, Cherry Hinton and Necklace villages, it would be wrong to abruptly close Coldham's Lane and drive up to 17,000 vehicles a day onto Newmarket and Cherry Hinton roads, especially without discussions between county and local councillors, Nikki Massey and GCP, as promised in part 2.4 of your report. I have listened carefully and engaged with the Residents Association and very much agree with them that traffic on Coldham's Lane is intolerable. I would argue that traffic calming measures significantly improve cycle lanes and a monitored 20-mile-an-hour speed limit would be an important first step towards reducing pollution and promoting more active travel on Coldham's Lane than that residents in Romsey would support. To sum up, I am very keen to be take part in a far-reaching solution for the future. I would suggest that money spent on Coldham's Lane should aim at improving active travel and reducing pollution by applying traffic calming measures, improved cycle lanes and instituting a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit that will in turn make a modal filter possible in the future. It's also important that this should be a discussion between county and city councillors who should work actively together for radical solutions as part of a city-wide reduction scheme. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Just hold on. An opportunity for members of the committee to ask for any clarification from you, Dave. So let me just see if anybody wishes to exercise that. If I see no hands raised, Dave, which means, oh, yes, I do. Sorry. Councillor Manning, you have a question or observation, please?
Yes, it's sort of a question or observation, I'm not sure which. I just wonder if Councillor Basin could comment on, we obviously had a very strong petition in favour of trying this modal filter, and I understand the concerns he's raising about rat running, but obviously there's a clear difference between Coldham's Lane, which is a long straight road, and sort of an informal part of the ring road, if you like. It's not officially one. There's a difference between that and the quite narrow and windy streets in Romsey. So given this is being done as a trial, as all these things are, would you not see the basis on which this could be tried as a trial, and then an assessment can be made of whether this rat running does happen or doesn't happen, and on that basis it should be something he'd be able to support?
Okay, thank you, Ian. Dave?
Chair and Ian, of course, through the chair. I am reminded that traffic always tries to find the easiest route. The back streets of Romsey are one way with opposing cycle lanes. So any extra traffic that uses those would become a nightmare. There will be 17,000 vehicles a day displaced. I do not think that the trial would be safe. I think that within hours, there would be accidents on the back streets of Romsey as people try and rat run. They are doing that currently to avoid the Mill Road Bridge closure. to add to that would be very dangerous. But this will be for traffic planners to decide. I'm putting an opinion as given to me by the residents of Romsey. And I certainly really have absolute sympathy with the people on Coldham's Lane who are enduring impossible levels of traffic. Thank you. Does that answer your question, Ian? Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I think that all members and officers of county have received lots of emails, if you like, on Coldham's Lane for and against Dave, and obviously for both of you. So I think we're all fully aware of what I call the difference between some residents of one particular part of Cambridge against another part of Cambridge. So I'm going to move on now, okay, to the third speaker, which is Roxanne. Okay, so good morning, Roxanne. And it's your turn to speak. Yes, and I can see you've joined us. So you have the same usual, you're fully aware of the process by now, I'm sure, after these few things that you've brought to our attention. So Roxanne, it is over to you to have your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. I'll get straight to it. I'm Roxanne Debo. I'm the Executive Director of CamCycle, and I'm speaking on behalf of the organisation, and this has been put together by a number of our members. CamCycle welcomes the County Council's work during the COVID-19 pandemic to improve key routes for active travel. This will free up capacity on the roads and public transport for those who need it most, and help people to keep safe distances when walking, cycling, or using mobility scooters. We're concerned to see that in many areas of the county, motor traffic is already exceeding pre-COVID levels. So we urge the council to implement tranche 2 measures as quickly as possible to help people to choose active travel for more of their everyday journeys. The list of schemes presented here could be transformative for walking and cycling in our region, and we urge the council to work closely with local stakeholders to ensure the measures are implemented effectively and communicated well to local communities. It's particularly important to highlight new commuting corridors, such as Scheme 5, Cambourne to Cambridge, to new cyclists, presenting them as complete routes rather than individual measures, as well as showing how existing routes are better joined up, such as how the guided busway connects via a safer, filtered Arbury Road and the proposed temporary cycle track on the Elizabeth Way Bridge as an alternative to narrow and congested shared use pavements and bridges. Our question 1, what plans has the county made for promotion of the new walking and cycling routes, particularly to those who currently travel by car? With 2 of the 3 recent cyclist deaths on the county's roads taking place at roundabouts, we particularly support efforts to improve safety at notorious junctions, including the Lensfield Road Fen Causeway roundabout, Newmarket Road Barnwell Road roundabout, and Mitcham's Corner. We encourage the council to continue to prioritise human safety and movement of people using sustainable transport modes rather than merely motor traffic flow at junctions like this, as it tweaks and amends its scheme and works towards its new Vision Zero strategy. Removing the biggest barriers to active travel will unlock walking and cycling for the greatest range of ages and abilities. We urge the council to continue to work with stakeholders to install missing elements of key routes. For example, enhanced measures in Milton Village on the key Waterbeach to Cambridge route and improvements around the Mill Road bus gate scheme. Another question, what plans are in place for continued engagement with local residents and stakeholders? We also encourage the council to continue to work on plans for improvements in every town and village across the county. For example, we've had correspondence in the last week from people who cycle in Waterbeach and Linton concerned about the safety of their journeys. Our third question, how does the county plan to continue to gather ideas for improvements across the county, and when will the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan be published? Overall, we welcome the work of councillors and officers and urge them to be bold and decisive when implementing upcoming schemes. With an uncertain winter ahead, it's important to protect our communities and the NHS and ensure that families and key workers can make essential journeys to work and school and do necessary shopping without fear of infection from the virus or serious injury from dangerous driving. And I'll just point out that so much research has been done that shows there really is a lot of quiet support for these schemes. So you have that support to be bold. Please get on and do it. Thank you.
Okay, stay with us, Roxanne. You've raised questions. Bearing in mind there are other speakers after you. I'm not proposing that the officers answer those questions at this moment in time, but leave it to the end of all speakers when we get to that point. So members, have you any questions or clarification you want from Roxanne? I'm just waiting to see if any hands are raised on the screen here. I see no hands raised, Roxanne, so thank you very much indeed, and thank you for your attendance, and look forward to working with you in the future. Oh yes, picture. Yes, thank you. Right. We can then move on, I think, to the next speaker, and I think it's Chair of the Hurst Park Estates Residents Association, which is Andrew Milburn, and I think you'll find you are the next speaker, Andrew. So yes, I can see that you're with us. So welcome, Andrew, and thank you indeed for your time. And it is over to you to present and your 3 minutes of questions or comments. Thank you. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. So I represent the Hurst Park Estate, which is an estate of 400 dwellings immediately to the west of Arby Road and exiting onto it via Lees Road. Based on the feedback from our residents, the ones who provided feedback, 75% in favour of the filter to stop rat running through the estate, which is a problem, and to make travel by walking and cycling in Arbury Road more pleasant and safer. Obviously, 25% against, mainly from people who are not happy about longer car journeys, but 75% is quite a big majority as these issues tend to go. I would say we are concerned about how dangerous Arbury Road is. There have been 2 fatalities in the last 10 years, which means that, as far as I can estimate, that's about 20% of city road fatalities. And it's statistically, at least, it's quite likely that someone else will die in the next few years if something really radical isn't really done about it. As a road, you know, it's pleasant, unpleasant, it feels unsafe, and it is unsafe. And if we don't have the filter, I think that something equally radical will need to be done about it, you know, to deal with the problems, because people kind of drive badly and there isn't the margin for error for that there, really. So I'll just keep it short of that. Thanks very much for your time.
Okay, just stay with us for the moment, please, Andrew. As any members wish to ask Andrew anything? I see no hands raised, Andrew, so thank you for your input. And I'll move on to the next question, which I think is from the chair of the Arbury Road East Residents Association, which is Lucy Edgley. I think I hopefully got that right. So Lucy, hopefully you're with us shortly, if not already.
Mute. Hello?
Yes, thank you. Welcome, Lucy. We can hear you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for giving us the chance to speak today. I'm, as you said, speaking on behalf of what we call ARERA for shortness, and the Arbury Road East end of Arbury Road could also be called the old end, the narrow end, the unimproved end, and it's the Milton Road end, and you all know it. In theory, we have a 20-mile-an-hour limit, but as Councillor Kavanagh pointed out earlier in another item, these speed limits are hard to ensure, and we're certainly seeing a much more speeding and much more aggressive driving, as well as more traffic, since the close of lockdown and probably with the Histon Road closure. We're a narrow road and we have narrow pavements and houses that come close enough to the pavement so that mainly they can't take their cars off the road. We have to have parking along the road. We strongly support the modal filter because we think it will make us safer, Arbury Road and safer, and also any other users of the road, walking, cycling, mobility scooter users. Also, we think it will make the NHS safer, because by cutting down the dangers of the road, we'll be preventing accidents and also hopefully helping to prevent the spread of the virus, because we'll have cleaner air. So our points are really 3, and they're written in more full with, we heard that George Vardalucas has sent in our petition, and that breaks down more what we say, but I'll be short. We believe that we'll get safer distancing, well, in fact, safe distancing, which has been impossible up till now, for pedestrians, for cyclists and mobility scooter users. We'll end dangerous driving, all that speeding and aggression. Those cars won't be able to practice that. And we'll also hopefully put paid then to cycling on our pavements, which are very narrow, but cyclists are often driven onto them by the danger of our road. Our road is narrow, but it is unfortunately rather straight. So it's a little bit of a sort of let's put our foot down road. And we'll reduce air pollution. It can often be bad, but in recent times, post-lockdown, post-closure of Histon Road, the build-up of motor vehicles at the lights can take a long time to clear, and the air gets absolutely horrible. I think Andrew from Hypera has said a little bit about all of these problems, and they are ours, and we would like to see them cured, and for Cambridge to be made a better city altogether. We think that we will help not only ourselves, but other road users and the National Health Service if we have a modal filter. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Just stay with us for the moment. Let's see if any member wishes to ask you anything. I see no member wishing to raise anything with you, so just for me to say thank you for your input. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I move on to the next speaker, which is Lily Purr, P-U-R-R. Okay, so I'm just looking to see if you are currently with us at this moment. I can't see you.
Lily Purr is actually on the screen at the moment.
Oh, okay, fine. Thank you, Mark. So welcome. Thank you. Please, you have your 3 minutes along with everybody else that has obviously you've been listening, I'm sure. So over to you for your 3 minutes. Thank you.
The residents, Chair, in Havenfield are mostly 70 to 90 years old, and they grew up in homes that didn't have cars, and the roads were nicer and quieter. These residents want you to encourage more cycling and walking for those who can, but with solutions that do not harm those people who cannot do more walking and cycling. And so I've got a couple of examples for you. The road block is going to be located absolutely outside our drive. If the roadblock is to the left, a resident said to me last week, I won't be able to get to church. The church is 200 yards down the road on the left. She said, I cannot ask my lift to put an extra 2 miles on the journey to go round the roadblock and get me to church, she said, and then ask them to put another 2 miles on the journey to bring me home. She said, I won't be going to church. And then another resident who filled in our survey form that we did just a couple of weeks ago, and he wrote on that, and I should have it, for him and his wife, he put, my main problem is how will we afford the taxi fare to get to the doctors or hospital? So if we put the block on the right of our drive, then his doctor is 600 yards down on the right. And for him, he has to take a taxi to get to the doctors, and it's going to put another extra £2 on the journey to get there and another £2 on the journey to come home, and he's going 600 yards. He's also written, we also have food to get. Lots of residents in Havenfield are just on the state pension. And it looks like Havenfield is going to become a prison instead of our lovely home. So the County Council says in the documents for this meeting that its corporate priorities are 3.1, a good quality of life for everyone. Well, I've just given you a couple of examples how the quality of life for many in Havenfield is going to deteriorate. 3.2, thriving places for people to live. The economy is officially in recession. The traders, the businesses, the shops are going to lose trade when people have to detour to get to them, and people are going to lose their jobs there. And then 3.3, you say the best start for Cambridge's children, safer trips by walking and cycling. Well, the roadblocks are going to push all the traffic into the estates of Arbury and King's Hedges. Those children there will have far worse and far much more unsafe walking and cycling. They're going to get more congestion, they're going to get more traffic, they're going to get more pollution, and they're going to get more danger on those roads. And we've heard a lot this morning about danger on the roads. There are 2 primary schools in these detour roads, one on the left, one in Arbury, one in King's Hedges. So the benefits for COVID are so small, Chair, from this. It sounded like from Andrew and from Lucy as if the whole of Arbury Road is going to benefit. The roadblock gives better social distancing and better cycling in 250 yards of the road. And so much we realise that that is important for those people there. But on 250 yards of better cycling and social distancing, all those people in Arbury and King's Hedges are going to suffer, and the children are going to suffer much worse cycling and walking, and there are miles of residential streets there in these detours that are going to suffer that. So there are better solutions. There are better solutions that have been suggested. And we ask the Highways and the Transport Committee to please scrap the proposal for road closure in Arbury Road. Thank you.
Thank you indeed for your input. Just hold on for a moment to see if any member wishes to ask you anything, please. I see no hands raised. So thank you very much indeed. Please, obviously you will, if you continue, you can listen on to the debate as we go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I then invite the next speaker, which is Cambridgeshire City Council, Jerry Bird, to speak to the committee? Yes, I can see your name appear. Okay, so over to you, Councillor Bird. So you have your usual our usual 3 minutes to make your point.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking today about the road closures in Cambridge and also the impact on disabled and elderly residents. I'd also like to add that no officers or city councillors have had no engagements with county about these closures. Trench 2, today you are looking at closing many roads. I have a big concern about Arbury Road, Pease Hill, Guildhall Street, Union Lane, and many other areas around this city centre. We want to be able to go down Pease Hill as the road will be closed, which means we lose 7 disabled parking bays. Mainly elderly and disabled park in this area as it's very close to the shops. Some elderly people get dropped off by taxi at Pease Hill for shopping and get picked up once finished. So here is our first area of discrimination, plus no consultation. The rest of the town centre and the pedestrian zone will also lose disabled parking, so stopping any residents with mobility problems from being able to shop. Arbury Road closures, this will have a big impact on many elderly and disabled residents that live in and around Arbury Road. Again, a loss of disabled parking, and many can't walk to bus stops. Again, no consultation. East Chesterton, road restrictions, no consultation with local councillors. Mill Road Bridge already closed. Elderly residents that want to go to doctors, shopping, etc. are being discriminated as it costs them more for their taxi journeys. And these are the most vulnerable people in this city. Many disabled residents with blue badges can't go over the bridge either. Again, discrimination. We have 3,400 blue badge holders in the city. So where are they going to shop or park? Mill Road is where many disabled and elderly shop. Again, no consultation. Not everyone can cycle, but in this city, we're all thinking about cyclists. Why? We're asking the county council consults residents of this city before it does any more emergency transport measures in Cambridge. The Equalities Act protects disabled people and elderly from discrimination, both individually and collectively. If an organisation such as a council make decisions without an equalities impact assessment, this includes people having access to public rights of way as Mill Road Bridge. The blue badge also acknowledges that the holder cannot reasonably use public transport, so it's not to be discriminated against, are given special privileges. But shutting the roads in the county is directly contravening the Equalities Act, which they are legally obliged to do. I believe, seeing that these ETOs were introduced in legislation in 1984 and the Equalities Act was passed in 2010, that subsedes the ETO laws. And I'll just add one last thing. In the Telegraph today, Grant Shepherd is talking about the money, the 250 million that's been given to councils to stop abusing the fund, have consultation with shoppers, disabled people, the elderly, and that's all in the Telegraph today. Thank you very much, Chair, for letting me speak.
Thank you, Jerry. Just hang about. I think it's Grant Shapps you were referring to, by the way. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, don't worry. We all suffer with tongue ties some days, me included. Okay, I've got a question for you, Jerry. So just hang about, please. Councillor Manning, could you please come in at this point?
Sure. It's more of a sort of comment on one of the things that Councillor Bird made, Chair, just to reassure the committee. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Chesterton division sort of covers most of East Chesterton and West Chesterton on the City Council, Arby Road being in West Chesterton. I think I just need to make the point that despite Councillor Bird saying there was no consultation, the local Arbury County Councillor has been involved in a number of meetings locally, as has Councillor Mike Sargent, who's the Ward City Councillor for West Chesterton. So I do just needed to correct. I'll make some further points during the main debate, Chair, but I think I just need to make the point that there has been consultation with local councillors at both county and district level, and that includes a meeting with Councillor Sargent with county officers. So that stuff has happened.
Okay, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I don't think you need to comment, Jerry, on that particular comment. Okay. So thank you for your input, Jerry, and look forward to seeing you again in the future. Can we move on to the next speaker, please? And can I please ask Hilton Parish Councillor Peter Baliki to speak to the committee? You have 3 minutes, Peter, to say what you wish. I'm looking to see if you've joined us at this moment in time.
He has, Chairman.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. So over to you, Peter. You have 3 minutes. Thank you for coming. Or not coming, but speaking.
Peter, I think you're on mute. You have to take yourself off mute.
Sorry about that. I thought it was a central muting. Thanks, Ian, for giving us the opportunity to speak on behalf of Hilton at this forum. Very simply, the 1040 is used as a major route for HGVs through the village. During lockdown, we saw a big reduction in the number of vehicles through the village, which has encouraged parishioners to get out there, get fit, get cycling. And we would like to take this opportunity to lobby the committee to put ETRO on the 1040 to implement a 24-hour HGV ban at this time for obviously the experimental period, to continue to allow parishioners to feel safe on the roads between Hilton and Papworth. It wouldn't take much, it just needs some road signage down at the Papworth end of the village by the Shilpa, and road signage up at the St Ives end of the village by the Bentley garage there to say, take the A1307, the old A14, down to the 1198 down onto the A428 or A1 that way, diverting the traffic out of the village. It's been a constant blight to the village, as the chairman will know. It comes up at meetings continually and regularly, and there are petitions going around and presentations and representations to various parts of Cambridgeshire County Council and Highways England to try and get this ban on HGVs put in place. It is a B road, it is not an A road. And that's what we're asking the committee to put that ETRO in on the B1040 through Hilton, please.
Thank you, Peter. Just remain there, Peter. I'll ask any member of the committee if they wish to ask you any questions. I'll just look at my screen to see if any of them raise their hands. And at the moment, none are raising their hands. Nope. Okay, so thank you, Peter. You're most welcome, obviously, to continue to listen to the debate as it proceeds.
Thanks, Ian. I have to go out.
Okay, right. Okay, and the final speaker is local member Councillor Jocelyn Scott. So I'm again looking to see if she is in with us yet. Is she with us yet? Jocelyn, are you there? I
don't see Councillor Scott, Chairman.
No, me too.
Yeah, a second ago.
She was she? Okay. Perhaps if we just see if we can get her back so that she can have her 3 minutes, please, Dan. I don't see her at all.
It's okay, she's on her way now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, members, for your indulgence. Yes, I see her now. Jocelyn, please unmute. Thank you. You have your 3 minutes, Jocelyn. Welcome.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm sorry that you can't see me. I was cut off, unfortunately, inadvertently. I would like to say that this issue of the COVID-19 proposals is concerning to me. As a county councillor for Arbury, as a county councillor within Cambridge City, and as a county councillor for the whole of Cambridgeshire, effectively, that is, I see my responsibility not as just limited to the area that I represent, although I respect the right, of course, of each representative of each area to be mindful of their own area. But one of the problems with this is that there needs to be consultation across boundaries. With the local highways initiatives, for example, those are dealt with on an individual basis with the relevant county councillor being consulted because they don't have a broader impact. Now, these proposals do, and if one looks at the proposals in the north of Cambridge, they affect people from the south of Cambridge, and the proposals in the south of Cambridge affect people in the north of Cambridge. The River Cam does not operate as in the past did the Berlin Wall. So that's the first point I'd like to make. Secondly, Labor, of course, we've supported all the resolutions about global warming and the importance of taking this into account, environmental measures and so on. Within the County Council, we've done that. And in the City Council, a motion was put forward to similar effect. So there's no question that we want less pollution, less congestion. We want to see far more healthy lifestyles, people cycling, people walking, and so on. But we recognise also that there are people who, for disability or age reasons or other reasons, and disabilities can be temporary, and those people are affected too. This all needs to be taken into account. When I look at the Arbury Road proposal, I must say that I've had representations from people on one side or the other. Now, Councillor Manning has said that I have attended meetings. The fact that one has attended meetings does not mean that one necessarily agrees with what the meeting is saying. And in terms of the Arbury Road issue, I've been involved in that since I was representing West Chesterton. And the first proposals were about the cycleways, to have them extended. The next one was that we wanted to have a one-way system, or that to be explored, a one-way down Arbury Road. And this one about the modal filter came up very, very recently. And I have participated in a maximum 2 meetings about that. Now, I would say that the issue here is, as I've said, that there are people who are for and against. I want to raise the concerns of the traders, because in Arbury Court there are traders who are extremely concerned. The women who work in the bakery, at a meeting that was held last week, socially distanced and the proper measures and so on, they were in tears because the COVID-19 has badly affected those traders, and they're therefore envisaging another 6 months of more effect, which could put an end to some of those businesses. The churches, in my understanding, are concerned. There are 3 in the area. Residents have, as I say, varying views. And as a county councillor, I must acknowledge that, and I certainly do. It can't be said that I'm representing one side or the other. The side that I am representing is that says that these matters need to be fully explored. And the final point I'd like to make is this: Histon Road is one way. That means that traffic is coming down Arbury Road, and I agree certainly with the residents who've spoken about the impact of extra traffic. Extra traffic, however, is also going along Carlton and Mere Way, and the number 8 bus has been diverted up there. If a block is put at the end of Gilbert Road, stopping turning right, the traffic will then go along Stretton Avenue, which is extraordinarily narrow road. I accept that this will be trialled and that that's the proposal, but more consultation has to take place. So when I say consultation, it's really monitoring that has to take place of the effect of the Histon Road project, the effect of the Milton Road project, which will be starting up before Histon Road finishes. And I have been in discussions with the project manager of both. He has said that there is a commitment by the officers on these COVID-19 to speak with him and consult with him, but that has not taken place yet because they're busy on the tranche 1. Yes,
Could you sum up, please, Jocelyn?
I shall. Thank you, and thank you for the notice. I'd just like to conclude by saying, please give consideration to the fact that these projects are not isolated from one another, and if there is to be any, if I can say with respect, sensible approach to it, there has to be an overall Cambridge recognition, and that the officers really need to see it as an overall Cambridge plan, that one plan will affect another plan, will affect another plan. If they're dealt with in isolation, then that is not the way to go. Could we please have an overall sensible approach that takes into account the interconnection and the interconnectivity of the plans and of the people of Cambridge and those coming from outside? Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Just stay on the line, please. I'm looking to see if there's any raised hands. I see no raised hands, Jocelyn, so just requires me, I think, to say thank you and wish you well for the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, members. Okay. I think I now will open the debate. As one of the speakers has requested an addition of a 24-hour lorry ban on the B1040, which is not currently part of the report prepared by officers and will required to be considered by the committee and members of the committee. And as I have a prejudicial interest, I will now pass over to the Vice Chairman and ask Democratic Services to remove myself from the meeting until the committee has come to a decision on this additional request. So I will now hand over to Councillor Howell, who will now chair the meeting on this particular item, and I will hopefully see you in the not too distant future. I will return. Mark, it's over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just wait. Thank you, members. Members, so what are we going to do on this particular part? We will just be discussing the request from the Hilton Parish Councillor. I'm sure many of you, as have I, received many emails on this particular matter. It is to, just to remind you, it is to stop the lorries. They are supposed to stop at the moment through the evening, but it is to stop, put a 24-hour ban on lorries going through the village of Hilton. So it's from St Ives to Papworth. And the request is that that particular section of road is closed off to lorries. They then have to go what we will call the old A14 from St Ives to Godmanchester and then down the 1198 towards Papworth. That is the request. But before I do that, I will ask if Mr. Hughes, if he's got any information for us on this particular matter. Mr. Hughes, you'll remember we spoke about the Department of Transport.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chairman. There's nothing particular in terms of the sort of specifics that I would add, Vice Chairman. I mean, I would look to Richard Lumley in terms of just to make sure there are no sort of practicalities from a highways perspective on this particular point. Richard, is there anything that members should?
I do apologise, Mr. Hughes. I might have put you on the spot there. One of my requests was before today's meeting, I'm sorry if I put you on the spot, was to find out as if this particular tranches 1 and 2 money could actually be used to carry out this particular request. And I was asked if somebody could contact the Department of Transport to find that out. I'm so sorry if that hasn't been fed.
No, not at all, Vice Chairman. No problem with that. I think I apologise to other members. I hadn't seen that request. I think, and I will actually in that case defer to Jeremy Smith as well. I think in terms of tranche 2, my view would be that the rules and the requirements of tranche 2 are pretty tough in terms of what we have to do, and certainly Jeremy Smith and the team have worked very hard to try and identify schemes that do meet the rules. So I think my immediate view, but maybe Jeremy, if you could confirm for the Vice Chairman and the committee, my immediate view is it would be unlikely. Jeremy, would you agree with that perspective?
Jeremy, before I bring you in, can I just stop you? I'm so sorry to stop you before you start. Ian Manning, you have you've asked to speak.
Yeah, Chair, thanks. And just sort of to comment on this and maybe suggest a way that would accommodate the officer concerns, but also accommodate obviously something that's a desire from your side. I just kind of understood that we're at the stage now where this is the list, and for all the good and bad that what's in the list, I've not attempted to make amendments because there were some things I didn't get in that I felt should have been. So I'm wondering if we could have some sort of resolution that sees us add potential extra schemes for a future meeting with all the then work that could go into that. Which would allow, because I can see the accusations we'll get if we add one thing in now, but then there are other things that weren't added in, and I'd have a concern there around. I don't want to oppose this. I just want to find a way that's kind of meets the officer concerns, but also lets us not drop this. If you see what I mean.
Thank you, Councillor Manning. Members, what I'm going to do, and I'm sorry if I'm making this up off the top of my head, but please forgive me on this one. What I'm going to do, I'm going to ask you all, please, is if this can go to the delegation of meeting, which would normally be the chairman and vice chairman, and obviously normally Mr. Cox or Mr. Hughes or a representative from the department, to look at this particular issue, not only for Hilton, but for others, to see if other schemes can be brought forward by the Department of Transport. Because if they say no, you cannot, then it stops there. We don't go any further. So if you would allow me to do that, and because I might feel slightly outnumbered with the amount of officers that are there, I will ask if Councillor Linda Harford can join me in that meeting, because of course Councillor Bates will not be allowed to attend because he has a prejudicial interest. And if we allow that to go ahead, then of course we can then take it to the next committee if need be. Councillor Manning, I saw your hand go up and then back down. Oh, it's back up.
So sorry, Chair. I just hope we could, because as you know, I was going to move an amendment to this item anyway to include lead opposition members. So could we add that to that, because we can obviously provide additional support. I wouldn't want you to be outnumbered.
Thank you very much indeed. At the moment, let's look at the Hilton issue, because the Hilton issue will determine if any others can be done. Because if no others can be, if Hilton can't go ahead, then no others can go ahead. It's as simple as that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to second your proposal, please.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Fuller, I have your hand up as well.
Councillor King beat me to it, Chairman.
Right, okay.
Chairman.
Members, with your indulgence, I'll go straight to the vote. Okay, that if we can do this, let's find out from the Department of Transport if this can be done. If it can be done, then obviously then we'll be bringing it back to this committee to see what to see then if any other schemes can be brought forward. And what we will do, we'll use the Hilton as a, I hate to use this term, but I shall, a test case to see what can be done. Okay, is that fine? Okay, members, that is the proposal. As garbled as it was, I'm sure Democratic Services have put something down. If everybody's agreed, could you just signify? Sorry, if you don't agree, can you signify by raising your hand?
Chair, sorry to be pedantic, could we just have it read out one more time?
I think it's going to be something like the lines of to contact the Department of Transport to look if the tranche 2 money can be used on any schemes, especially with regards to HGV vehicles, something along those lines, if that's okay. Yeah. Jeremy,
definitely.
did you acknowledge yourself? Jeremy, did you want to speak on this particular matter?
I'll just very quickly say, very happy to do that. From the reading of the guidance, I think a lorry ban of the nature discussed almost certainly won't be compliant. I would note there's probably a strong chance the DFT will say it is for local authorities to determine whether schemes are compliant with the guidance. So it may just be part back to us, but very happy to have that conversation with them.
Thank you very much indeed. And on this particular one with regards to the Hilton, which will be, as I say, the test case, I will ask if Councillor Harford could be part of that particular delegation group, if that's okay with everybody. So that would be my proposal, Councillor Manning. And if anybody disagrees, could you please signify? Thank you very much. I accept that proposal has gone ahead. Councillor King seconded. And if Democratic and Services can let the chairman back in, that would be much appreciated.
On his way.
Councillor Bates, you are now back the chairman. You two have to unmute, however, before you can speak.
Thank you, members. I think we go to the actual debate now on the issues, and so really it is a matter for members now to raise their hands, as they say. We have obviously got the paper before us. I think what I would only ask for members, please, to try to avoid is repeating what a previous member has said, bearing in mind it is now 17 minutes past 1. I have got now a couple of hands already. So Councillor Manning, you're first, Councillor King next, Councillor Kavanagh, and then Councillor Hartford. So Ian Manning, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll have to give Councillor Kavanagh some training on this. So I'll try and be brief, but cover a few issues. I've sort of got three groups of points to make here. One about capacity in terms of delivery of these schemes. Some stuff about Arby Road, that's the Arby Road scheme that's not specific to Arby Road, I think is general across all these schemes, and a few things that are specific to the Arby Road scheme. I'll try and get through this quickly. So the first one, I have a really, really serious concern about the capacity and the workload on our officers introduced by these schemes. Partly is obviously massively influenced by the government's directive that we can't bring in extra consultancy for this. It has to be delivered in house, and yet we're having to do all these schemes on top of the current schemes we're doing. That is not to blame anyone in particular, but it is to say that I think is exposing that it seems to me to expose that we were at a capacity limit anyway, and then we had a massive extra tranche of work put on top of that. And I think that relating to that, particularly we had the Coldham's Lane Residents Association, which are an example of a residents association, and there are many other residents associations and parish councils like this who've engaged very positively with these schemes. But there are lots of areas where either the local councillors or the parish or whatever has not made suggestions, and then the officers are having to field questions around why didn't I have lots of suggestions in my area, and it's not down to them. So that it's down to the fact they didn't get any suggestions. So that adds on top of all the additional workload, that adds the stress of them answering things that is simply not their fault. So that said, I just go on to a few sort of comments that are general, but they relate to RB Road, but they're general across all schemes. It is not clear to me that we have a detailed explanation of why certain things got into tranche 2 and certain things didn't get into tranche 2, other than it is simply the officers were ridiculously busy trying to get it all done, which I accept, but it does create a problem for the public perception of how these lists are generated. I've this morning briefly spoken to a representative from the taxi industry about getting GPS measurements from their from the taxi firm. So when we create a modal filter, we have a clear evidential basis on which to decide whether taxi journeys were made more expensive or not. So I think that's a positive thing, and it's about engagement. Lots of points have been made either way about relating to disability or other impairments that people may have. I think I just would make the point that disability is a very wide term, and there are a number of people who will potentially lose out because they are a wheelchair user and or cannot physically drive a car for whatever reason. There are also an equally large number of people who, for example, people with mental health conditions, people with visual impairments, who will massively benefit from reduction in traffic levels. So I think we've got to the point I make there is simply that it is a wide range, and we shouldn't be beholden to the idea that all people with disabilities lose out, because some will actually gain from this. Specifically to the scheme, I'll just go over a couple of these points in the issue of time, but I wasn't, of course, claiming that because Councillor Scutt came to meetings that she supported the scheme. I was, of course, hoping that, given that these meetings started back in May, where we involved her and other ward councillors for West Chesterton, that they would be doing consultancy with their constituents in those months. That apparently, as far as I can tell, happened. I also need to make clear that, in common, I think, probably with lots of other schemes, that as a result of informal consultation, a large amount of modifications have been made on the basis of feedback from residents who've spoken at this committee, including residents from Havenfield. Lots of modifications have been made to the initial ideas. There is also, disappointingly, with the RB Road scheme, a lot of misinformation being put out. Things like letters saying that it has to be in place for 18 months, as opposed to 18 months being the maximum limit of an experimental order. And the idea that people are pushing for a physical roadblock, which is not what we've been pushing for. The main thing we've been discussing is a bus gate, Allen Mill Road. I'm nearly getting to the end, Chair, don't worry. And I just obviously the very specific point about RB Road, because it was mentioned by a number of speakers against it, is there are shops at both ends of RB Road. So by placing a modal filter in one location, you do not block everyone else from all shops. You block them off. You potentially block them off from set shops, but not all of them. I think that covers all the points. I've tried to do it quickly. I'm sorry it was so fast, Chair. So just the two final things were two amendments to propose. I'm happy for you to take them together or all separately. The first one is just to add in to the delegation in B, along with lead opposition members, and I hope that just supports the sort of collegiate way we've done this. The second one is to try and meet the concerns that have been raised a lot, is to add a third addition that says, a new addition C, that says officers should take into account the views of local members at county and district and parish level before progressing with individual schemes. I don't doubt for a second that officers would intend to do that, but we were promised that more consultation in tranche 1, after tranche 1 going to tranche 2, and it doesn't always seem to have happened. And that's the reason for adding that in there explicitly.
Okay, Ian, we'll come to the amendments, I think, a little later. I've got other speakers, what I call, in the queue, so I'm going to let them speak, I think, first before we get into amendments or votes, etc. So the next speaker is Councillor Simon King. Simon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Welcome back. I've just wanted to focus upon Wisbech. I'm sure that comes as no surprise. I live in Wisbech, and we do actually have a cycling lobby group in Wisbech. It's not as well established and resourced as the Cambridge group. I would fully accept that, but we do have one, and I think that needs to be, their involvement needs to be embedded in future work. So the first thing I would like to ask is, where there's this reference of the major scheme in Wisbech of improvements to Freedom Bridge, Wisbech, that I think that ought to be a little bit more ambitious, which should include, which should go from the Sutton Road and Leverington Road junction to the NCN Route 1, that's the National Cycling Network Route 1, crossing of Lynn Road. So it's exactly the same scheme, but it's just a bit wider. And I would like to propose that is taken away for further discussion between you, Mr. Chairman, and Councillor Howell, and myself as the local member. And I think we can get something better than just Freedom Bridge. So that's my first proposal. And secondly, I would like to request that we include on the action plan a reference to identifying funding for a revised new edition of the Wisbech cycling map. I accept that would not be included under this funding tranche, but surely we can find a small amount of money to do that as a commitment to promoting cycling in the north of the county. So those are my two requests, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. The next speaker is Noel Kavanagh. Noel.
Yeah, many thanks. It's been very interesting to hear the residents making their points about the various proposals. All the time I'm listening, I'm thinking to myself, yes, the reason why we're all here is because COVID-19 is still with us. These emergency measures have to be implemented. And in fact, looking at the way the number of cases of COVID-19 is rising, it appears that it's going to be even more important for us to get these measures in place. We've learned lessons already from Tranche 1. I've been closely involved in the closure of Mill Road Bridge. I think officers have done a tremendous job in getting both lists of schemes together at very rapid pace. Also, the implementation of the schemes for Tranche 1 has been fraught with difficulties, and I think we've got to applaud the officers and their teams for what they've achieved so far. As I've just said, what my main motive for supporting all these schemes is on the basis of public health. We have been put in these schemes to enable social distancing, to encourage people, as you know, to cycle and walk as much as possible. And I hope I'm not accused of being patronizing for that. It's just that amid all the arguments that are put forward by people for not doing things, there seems to be that basic fact that can be forgotten. So from some of the general points that have come up, one that I would like to put a plea for is we heard from Councillor Jerry Bird that parking spaces for disabled have been lost. Can we ensure, as the schemes go in, that there are no loss of parking spaces for the disabled? And if they have to be temporarily moved, can they be sort of replaced on a one-to-one basis? I think that would be a very good thing to do. Now, just turning to specifics, Coldham's Lane is in my constituency. I have for a number of years been trying to have improvements made on the LHI applications to Coldham's Lane. Put in applications for speed indicator devices, and currently there's an application going through for a new pedestrian crossing. There's recently there was the combined authority put forward plans to redesign the roundabout at Sainsbury's. That design has been, how should I say, gone away to be looked at again to make it more pedestrian and cycle friendly. So what I'm saying is Coldham's Lane has been subject of close attention to try and improve it. Yes, traffic numbers have gone up. Yeah, I instigated a traffic speeding survey, and it was quite revealing the well, the law breaking that takes place on the road. And I think the Residents Association, which I worked closely with, probably saw the coming of the proposals for Tranche 2 as the answer to what are long-term problems for the road. When I initially put forward Coldham's Lane to be included in the special measures lists, I was actually thinking of a smaller scale approach to improving the bridge that goes from Cromwell Road across to the Beehive, because it's very hard to have social distancing on that bridge between cyclists and pedestrians. The modal gate, you know, the bus gate, I think has worked really well on Mill Road Bridge. It has had its dissenters, but overall from the residents and people even beyond Mill Road, they've praised the achievement of that. My big worry is that if this modal gate is put in on Coldham's Lane, it's going to undermine what has been achieved by closing Mill Road Bridge to all vehicles apart from buses and emergency vehicles. And the reason for that is, as has been pointed out, is that there's going to be a major, massive rat run problem. The 17,000 vehicles that have been counted as going up and down Coldham's Lane will actually seek a way through, and that way will be through the densely populated terraced streets in Romsey. And that will completely undermine what has been achieved by closing through traffic on Mill Road. So I think, as much as I want to support all the Tranche 2 measures, I think the suggestion to have the modal gate on Coldham's Lane is not the right thing to do at the moment. We're also looking in a broader context. The Greater Cambridge Partnership has begun consultations about the East Access. Coldham's Lane features on that, as was already mentioned by the presenter of the petition. I think a longer term solution, looking at the network in totality, is the best way forward on this. As was mentioned, I think there was no mention by anybody of where the traffic would go if the modal shift was put in on Coldham's Lane. Sorry, the modal gate was put in on Coldham's Lane. There's only one way that traffic would go, and that would be seeking routes through the streets like Cromwell Road, Sedgwick Street, and so on. So that's why I don't think it is the right way forward at the moment. And that's why I'm reassured that on the documentation on the 2.5, it's saying that the modal gates, not just on Coldham's Lane, but also on Arby Road, are going to have a lot more investigation before any implementation. And I urge that very deep investigation is undertaken, particularly looking at if the modal gate is put in, what will happen to the traffic?
Okay.
I don't know if it's possible to actually put in draconian measures to stop rat running. And that, I'm talking about Coldham's Lane now, but I'm
No,
this also
can
applies.
we move? You're taking up quite a lot of time, Noel, and
All
coming
right,
down. Can we try, bearing in mind the time, Noel? I'm conscious of other commitments that people might have. I don't particularly want to stop you. I think some of that comments can be covered in a general way forward, Noel. Okay. Is there any points you really want to make at the end? No, sorry.
Well, what I was saying about the rat running, although I support the Arbury Road bus gate, modal gate, the fear is, and amongst the residents at the upper end of Arbury Road, is that there will be rat running through the streets of King's Hedges and Arbury, and that must be taken into account. I agree something must be done at the Milton Road end. I, as a cyclist, use that route frequently, and it is hugely dangerous. And it's very disappointing that the segregated cycle route didn't go all the way down. But look carefully at what will happen to the traffic if a modal gate is put in.
Okay, I think we understand on both the points you're making, which is whatever we do, the consequences of whatever we do or suggest. And I think what you're suggesting is that we need more work on some of the schemes, not necessarily all of them, but some of the schemes. I'm going to go to Linda Hartford now. Linda, thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairman. I'll keep it as quick as I can. So I've got 3 points to make. First of all, I want to endorse Councillor Manning's comment about officer capacity. I'm not quite sure what the solution is, but it is something of which we should all be aware and seek to eliminate any unnecessary complications that add to that pressure. Second point is, I'm afraid, a parochial one that is not dissimilar to the one raised by Councillor King. I note that the paragraph relating to tranche 1 schemes already implemented makes no mention of the one that was put in Girton. Consultation on tranche 1 has been disappointing for that parish, as it has resulted in the removal of the original scheme despite a lot of support from local residents and the parish council. I would please ask that consideration is given to how a revised scheme might be brought forward, having raised their aspirations once and then dashed them. Finally, and very importantly, I want to thank all the residents who have taken the time to contact me on the various schemes. I've given very close consideration to all the comments that they have made, as well as to those speakers who have given up their time to address us today. The one scheme that gives me the most discomfort is the one proposed for Arbury Road. The thing that saddens me most is the division of a community. I would hope that on this particular proposal, we can ask officers to do further work, which I think you've just alluded to, Chairman, to reconcile the two very different views that have been expressed. I want to support as many of the schemes as possible for the very obvious reasons why the funding has been allocated by central government in the first place. But at a time when communities are really trying to help each other, I would ask that this particular proposal is reviewed in order that it is not a cause for unwelcome division. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I've got Rob. Is there a problem, Rob Sanderson?
Yes, there will be. Is that we can't stream 2 meetings and see why committee starts at 2 o'clock. So I think we have to be very careful now on the time.
Okay. The next person to speak is Amanda Taylor. Could you please be conscious of the time, Amanda, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad to hear that. I thought that I was the problem about to happen.
No.
Yeah, I'm generally very supportive of moves to facilitate walking and cycling and of the government's intentions in this area. But I do feel that in Cambridgeshire we have something of an over-reliance on the points closure option of closing the road to motor traffic. Now we've had a lot of comment and debate on this in my own particular area, where people are making their journeys often to Addenbrooke's Hospital, which of course is no trivial trip, and a trip that you do need to make. Now, for most motorists, the points closure is a matter of extra time and distance, but for some people, it's actually hitting them in their pocket, it's costing them more money. And I'm referring to people who are using taxis. I had been concerned about this already from my own constituents, and it was very useful to hear earlier this morning from Panther Taxis, and thank you for forwarding that email, Councillor Bates, and from Councillor Bird and Ms. Purr from the Residents Association. You know, as we have heard many times, not everybody can cycle, and even those of us who can cycle can't cycle all of the time. We've talked a lot about people with disabilities, and it's not just people who have a blue badge. There's many people who don't quite qualify for a blue badge, people who are elderly and just, you know, don't really have the ability for cycling or walking, people who are ill for a short time. There's also some younger people, such as pregnant women who, you know, in the later stages of pregnancy, it's not easy to ride a bike, or if you're a new mother with a baby. Again, you know, these people are probably likely to be relying on taxis to get about. And it's also young people who often will take a taxi if they're working late at night for reasons of personal safety. I don't want to see people getting the taxi quite close to where they live and having to walk the last little bit, not being safe for that. And also, I don't want people to be spending, you know, vast amounts of extra money on it. So I'd like to put a challenge really to the officers to look at these groups of people, to consider the needs of people with disabilities, people who are pregnant, the elderly, anybody who really has to rely on a car, by a taxi travel and needs to do so. I haven't seen the EQIA for this in detail, but if we can allow access for buses or emergency vehicles, then I'd like the officers to look at a way in which we can allow taxis to get through when they can demonstrate that they have a passenger who needs to be travelling by taxi.
Okay, thank you.
I have one other point, and that's about the process of this. When the ETROs were first presented to us, I was under the understanding that it was experimental, and that before being made permanent, we would be going to a normal traffic regulation order. Looking at the report here, where it talks in the appendix about how we will publicise and deal with the consultation on the ETRO, it seems to be going straight from consider representations to receive to implementation of the permanent one. I would have hoped that the permanent TRO would be advertised in the local paper and considered properly in the same way as any other TRO. Otherwise, these experiments are not just a test, they're actually opening the door to a permanent one, and that will be seen by residents as being rather deceptive, I feel.
Okay, I'm conscious of time, so what I'm going to do, members, is ask Jeremy Smith and officers to make any comments that we've got. Go to Ian Manning about any amendments, and let's members, we have to see a way forward, please, so bear that in mind. So I'm not going to open up the debate anymore. So Jeremy or Richard or Graham, have you any comments, quick comments, please? Bearing in mind that in 20 minutes time we will be cut off for our colleagues. Okay.
Yeah, there's a whole range of things there, Chair, so I'll try and go through quickly. Just Cambridge Cycle Campaign publicity. Yes, we are seeking comms resource for that, and we have got some comms resource in. It's intended to publish the LC whip, or to ask committee for approval to publish the LC whip for consultation in either October or November of this year. Councillor Bird's concerns about the closure of Pease Hill, the city centre area. Actually, those points of discussion, those proposals actually came from discussions with the City Council's city centre restart group. So there was debate with the City Council there, and they are very mindful of the issues for disabled parking and don't want to do anything that would disadvantage people accessing disabled parking there. Delivery capacity, we are putting together a delivery team, Councillor Manning, Councillor Hartford, and we will be seeking to utilise consultant resource there. I think the practicalities of the situation with the funding and with the other programmes we've got mean that that's inevitable, and actually the government are a little bit more relaxed in the guidance this time. They basically say don't unless you absolutely have to, instead of just don't. Wisbech, more than just Freedom Bridge. I totally agree with the sentiment. The team will need to look at what is practically possible using temporary measures and what might be done on a more permanent basis, but very happy for those discussions to take place with you, Councillor King. Disabled parking, no loss, Councillor Kavanagh. I think that is actually the basic principle the delivery teams are working on. We don't want to remove any disabled parking, and if we did have to remove, it would be a case of remove and replace in somewhere equally accessible. And if that's not possible, you need to review the basis on which the proposal is being made. Coldham's Lane and Arbury Road, I think there's a hell of a lot to unpack there, so I won't go into detail, but very happy for the discussions to take place. And just flag, you know, as others have, one of the reasons that those schemes weren't taken forward in tranche 1 is because officers very much realised that the interaction with everything else that's going on does need to be taken into account. On an Arbury Road, for example, we do have monitoring data from the Histon Road closure that will help inform everything that's going on in the area, will help that discussion, and we'll need to look at what we can do to get data on Coldham's in the context of Mill Road too. What else?
Jeremy, in the poorness of time, we're going to find ourselves cut off shortly.
Yeah.
Okay, with the other committees starting. So can I just bring in Graham and then let's try to move. I apologies, Jeremy. I know there's plenty of other things you would wish to make, but I don't think we have that facility at the moment with time. Graham, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just very briefly, I mean, the question was raised at the end, I think by Councillor Toman, maybe Councillor Manning as well, around the ECROs. And I've just had a quick chat with Richard Lumley. I think because of the nature of these things, I mean, the ETROs, if there are objections, then the normal process would be to bring it back into the committee process. Now, we don't have, for Cambridge, we don't have the Joint Area Committee, but there is an established process that if things aren't resolved, they come back into committee. So just for clarity of members there.
Okay. Councillor Manning, I think it's time for you to bring forward your amendment, please.
Yeah, so there's two, Chair. So the first one is just to add into B the words along with lead opposition members. So it's including, as we did last time round, including changes to the programme, including lead opposition members. Is that clear?
That's clear. I think you'll find Councillor Howe has got another suggestion to bring forward. But go to your second one, please.
And the second one is just to have a new addition C, which is officers should take into account the views of local members at county and district level and parish councils where appropriate, before progressing with individual schemes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I haven't got the actual Councillor Manning's proposal in front of me, but what I wish to do is to add the word city towards the end of the actual suggestion, the amendment. So it says with regards to city proposals.
Okay.
And I'd like to second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So Ian, if you are prepared to accept that amendment, which I think is proposed by Mark Howe and seconded by Councillor King, we could hopefully move forward. I think what it's essentially saying is there are some more further discussions within the city, and therefore we can confine those conversations with the city and city members.
Sure, Chair. We'll probably have to take out the word and parish councils in that case, but I think we all understand what we're voting for. So.
I think we all understand what we're trying to do is a way for. I think lots of us recognise we've got to do something. It's sometimes what is that something, and I think can we go forward now, please, members, to those you've got the original recommendations, which is A, which is about noting and commenting, the B, which is slightly amended to add those amendments of city, and the addition that in respect of asking officers to talk to parishes, districts, etc.
If Councillor Manning has accepted my amendment to his amendment, I would be happy to second his amendment.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. So members, we I think have got a way forward. I think there is a lot of forward discussions to take place. There is a lot of discussions across the whole county. Some of them will be easier discussions than others. I'm committed, and I know Mark Howell and other members are, to actually progressing something, whatever the something happens to be, okay, in all the districts. So I'm going to look now and go to a vote on what has been proposed by the original recommendations as laid out on the paper, plus the amendment which has been, I think, seconded by Councillor Manning stroke Councillor Howe. So members, are we in agreement, please? I'm looking to see any hands raised. I see none whatsoever. I therefore take that as unanimous. I think it would be useful, Democratic Services, to talk to me outside to make sure that we've got all those correctly words within the recommendation, please, before we go out to the public. I have to move on, I'm afraid, to the last item, which I think is Rob. Rob, it's the last item, which is the amendments, which is at number 10 on item 10.
Yes, Chairman, just to say changes to the forward plan since publication include future transport policies removed from the October meeting, additions to the November committee, which are all non-key decisions, Chisholm Trail project status reports, that's moved from what was the October meeting, Coldham's Lane roundabout, and Lancaster Way, that was previously to go to the December meeting.
Okay, thank you. Amanda Taylor, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. At the July meeting, as people will read from the minutes, we were asked to bring a report on project management improvements with a view to a wider comprehensive review of capital project management schemes throughout the county. At the time, we raised an amendment asking for this objective to be formalised, and you rejected that, Chair, on the grounds that you would bring it forward to a future committee at the appropriate time. Looking at the forward plan all the way up to June, which I see no mention of such a report, even 9 months on. Could you please advise us when you think the appropriate time would be? Because we still have a huge amount of interest about massive overspends on capital projects in my area.
Okay, thank you.
That was very quick because
no, apologies for that. I am Mr. Steve Cox, the Executive Director, is not on this meeting at the moment. Myself and Councillor Howe are in discussions with him, currently ongoing. They are not complete yet, about bringing something together. So when his work is that he's finished, which he has commissioned and he is working on, when we reach that point, it will appear on the forward agenda.
Do you foresee that being before June next year?
That's a very good question. I don't have a good answer at this moment until I can talk to the Steve Cox on that particular issue. It is ongoing. It is programmed in. That he has undertaken and has committed to do some work. That work is still ongoing. So rest assured, it is in hand. I can't give you a date.
Thank you. I hope we can have one soon.
Thank you. Point taken. Members, I'm going to call a halt to the meeting.
So sorry, Chairman, but Councillor Dupree has asked if she could speak.
You'll have to be very quick, please, Lorna.
Very quickly, I mentioned reviewing KPIs earlier. I see no evidence that that's intended to be done before the end of the agenda plan either. There's a quarterly review, but a quarterly report update, but no fundamental review, and I think that would be helpful to consider.
We will take that away, Lorna, and discuss it with Steve Cox, okay? That you're content with that, and I'm happy with the Vice Chairman to pick that up on KPRs, okay? Thank you, members. Thank you for your indulgence. Apologies for the length of time it's taken us, but we've reached some important decisions today. So thank you for your time and have a rest of the day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. Thank you.